The year was 2069. Nice. After centuries of disrespect from humans, spiders have finally risen up and toppled our hierarchy, leaving our world in a state of decay. Now, these horrifying beasts infest every nook and cranny of the earth with their many disturbing shapes and sizes. All hope had seemed to be lost, until one person, one gaming gigachad, one me. That's right, today I challenged myself to survive and conquer our now spider-infested world for 100 days. And when I say spider-infested, I mean it. For the next 100 days, I will be at the constant mercy of the spider horde. These monstrosities are so persistent that it makes even small tasks like getting wood an absolute nightmare. And if you think that's bad, every 30 in-game days that go by, the spiders only get worse. They mutate and become stronger, faster, and much more horrifying. And if you know anything about me, I do not like spiders. So this was going to be fun. And before we get into it, these videos take a ton of time and effort to make, so if you do go on to enjoy what you see, please consider subscribing. It means a ton to me, and for every new subscriber I get on the channel, I will personally remove a spider from your house. And trust me, they're there. You just can't see them. Anyways, let's let this horrifying adventure begin. So here I was on the first day. I began looking around this desolate world only to see spiders, spiders, and more spiders. Things were going very well. So before the freshly spawned horde of spiders decided to get some of my gamer meat, I began heading off towards the only sign of life that I could see in the distance. This yellow tent. And every step of the way, I was chased by more and more spiders. And for some reason, I was being shot by invisible arrows, which was not supposed to happen. I desperately attempted to get away from them until this skilled spider cornered me and, wow, day one. So many spiders, I sure hope I don't die from them. This time, I was for real. I fixed the little issue spawning weird mobs, and I was out here ducking and dodging spiders galore while on my way to the very first structure that I could see. I followed the smoke in the distance until I found myself at this small little campsite. However, I couldn't stay here for long because I was being followed. I struggled to take all of the loot from the chest, including some melon seeds and one iron ingot. I stole the bed and I was out of there. At this point, I was already losing health and hunger, so I desperately scarfed down the rotten flesh I had joined from the campsite before moving on to the next one in the distance. The very one that I may have died at in a previous life. Hypothetically speaking, of course. I quickly stopped by the next structure where I found a cheeky chest tucked in the corner with more iron and an iron axe inside. I had now found myself a weapon. With my new tool in hand, I ran back to the campsite to hide from the spiders to catch my breath. And apparently there's campers. And they're hostile. Who would have guessed? Good to note, honestly. So here I was, day one, attempt number 3. Not much of an apocalypse video without death, but today was going to be different. I spawned in using the same seed because I was not going to let the camper win. I ran up to the nearby very on-brand camper settlement, stole the bed, and inside of the chest was a golden apple and diamond horse armor. Honestly, in this world, I was really going to need them. After borrowing those things, I was back to dodging spiders left and right while on my way to the next campsite. Even though this was the same seed, I think something was different, or maybe I went the wrong way. Honestly, I have no clue. I looted the second camp, which gave me a second golden apple, but before I was able to get much more of the loot, this place had become overrun with spiders. I took off running in another direction, which conveniently ended up being the exact place I was looking for, except this time, there was no camp. I made my way back to the other structure instead, where I was relieved to see the same iron axe hidden inside of the chest. After quickly grabbing it, I spent what felt like forever running around trying to find a spot to catch my breath from all of these spiders. After jumping in the water to craft some wooden planks, I tried to block myself in this tent, but no. The spiders made their way inside, and yeah, I died a third time. This mod pack was really bringing back those Arrowcraft flashbacks. So day one, attempt number 4, and today was going to be different. For real this time. So to begin, I looted the first tent, stole the golden apple and the iron from the second, and made my way to the iron axe inside of the third structure before booking it. There were some crazy custom spiders in the distance, and I knew I was not going to stand a chance against them. I needed a place I could get resources for armor and fast. I kept running in different directions, just trying and hoping for a break where I could do something, but everywhere I turned, there were special spiders waiting, watching. While running, I beat as much of the wheat as I could for some easy bread, and I jumped in the water after to think of a plan. Don't worry, even while in water, I still had this beautiful elite spider waiting for me on the nearby land. No matter where I go, I get no freedom in this world. After finally stopping to think for a second, I noticed what looked like a huge bridge off in the distance. I began swimming towards it, hoping for a fresh start, but I was still trapped by more spiders. And this time, I didn't have any wood to even make a crafting table to craft bread from my wheat. I dodged some more spiders while heading towards this abandoned-looking city, where the spiders finally gave me a break. I mined a bunch of spider wood, apparently, that actually looked pretty nice, but guess what? I could not make a crafting bench out of any of this wood, and there were no other trees in sight besides them. So, against my better judgment, I headed into the city, and very carefully began to explore. The lack of spiders made me extremely uneasy, and then the sun began to set, so I figured I'd lock myself in this small portion of a building, placed my bed down, and I dozed off for the night. Finally, I had survived the first real day. So yeah, as you can see, this world is full of spiders, and things are not going to be easy from here on out. And that's why for this video, I made myself a couple of goals to get by. Number one, obviously, I must survive. These spiders are everywhere and will not stop until I'm a pile of goo on the ground. Or there's a pile of goo inside me, but let's not talk about that. So I want to make myself a secure fortress in the perfect area and hopefully spawn-proof it so these monsters can no longer spawn inside. Because yes, they can spawn anywhere, including any light level. Number two, I want to get strong. I will harness the resources that this world has left to make myself beefier than a can of Chef Boyardee beefaroni. And number three, after obtaining the power of the beefaroni gods, I will hunt down and slay as many spiders as I can as I continue to spread my influence across the land. These spiders stand no chance. It was now the second day, and I set out hoping to find myself some wood. I wandered around the nearby edge of the city for a bit with zero luck, so even though there were more spiders hiding in the town, I decided to go back for now. I very carefully made my way deeper into the city, where I found not only trees, but like every single kind. I mined the acacia, stole a bunch of saplings, and I got some spruce as a backup. After getting more wood than an anime convention, I made myself a crafting bench, crafted myself 15 bread, and before I could think, I used one of my only 3 iron ingots to make myself a shield, so I could now not make an iron pickaxe. However, that was fine because with wood, I could just make a wooden and stone one that would mostly work out the same, or at least that's what I tell myself. So with my new tool and resources, I left the city in search for a safe place to get some iron, and I guess you could say I found it. I entered this small, quaint little cave with a few spiders, until once again I was being shot by an invisible spider on a skeleton. It was almost like the game decided to still spawn in the skeleton on top of spider jockeys, but you just couldn't see him. It's almost like Dad. I barely made it out of that cave alive. After AFKing for a bit to heal, I went back down inside, and one by one, I Control-Alt-Deleted each spider, including the one that shot arrows. As if spiders weren't scary enough, after cleaning out a sizable amount, I crafted a wooden pick to get some stone for a stone pick, and I began mining the nearby iron ores and smelting them. However, during this, spiders were still very persistent. If I could walk out of here with full iron, I would stand a much better chance against regular spiders, but even with that, I would still be no match against the world's worst spiders this world had to offer. While waiting for my iron to smelt, I did a little more scouting of the cave system, and everywhere I went, there were just more spiders. So I headed back to my base, I guess, where I made an iron pickaxe that I used to mine this strange looking green ore. As the sun went down outside, I made some doors to lock myself in, and I was smelting this green ore only for it to be uranium. I looked up what I could make with this, and these tools and armor pieces were absolutely cracked. Honestly, these things were so good that I was thinking there must have been some kind of catch. While I spent time looking at what I could craft, the spiders around me spent that same amount of time moving in closer and closer on my location. After opening my front door, there were now no more ores that I could get without a fight. I tried to make my way down to the nearby iron, but my axe was about to break, so I was forced to make a uranium sword with what I had. Now that I was a little stronger, or so I thought, I once again started pushing until this absolutely insane series of events went down. I ate my gapple to fight these special spiders, and after getting knocked around, I fell down not only once, but 2 times, and I now found myself even lower in this hellhole and with pretty much no food. However, this area seemed a bit different. It seemed to be void of any enemies, at least for now. So I got to work mining as much iron as I could with this opportunity, and I even built my way up to get some more along what looked like even more uranium. Things were appearing to have turned around for the better. That is, until he showed up. This disgusting, disturbing, long-legged spider came out of nowhere and began bashing my health down faster than I could even think to block. I panicked and ran back as far as I could to get away from him. I desperately checked my inventory for the first block I could use to block this man on the other side of the cave. And now, here I was, trapped, half dead, in a deep, dark cave. And to make it even better, the only method I had of healing this health potion turned out to be complete garbage. So here I was, trapped in a cave with minimal health. If I was going to have any chance of getting out of here, I was going to need more armor. So, since I had free time, I guess you could say, I sat here smelting all 11 iron that I had gotten to make myself some armor. After smelting the iron, I made a chest plate, some boots, I put them on, and I began poking my head out the opposite direction for a possible way out. While fighting a spider, I accidentally right-clicked my sword, and this thing shot some kind of radiation projectile that actually made contact. This thing was going to make things a lot more manageable. At least I hope. At this point, I was now in full-on survival mode. Ended up getting out of that hole after the long-legged spider finally despawned, and apparently you can eat cave vines, and they're actually a pretty decent source of food. After mining some more iron, I walled myself in and I smelted it to finish off my set of armor. I crafted the helmet, but unfortunately I was one short of legs, plus I was once again out of food, so I wasn't quite free of this system of caves yet. I continued on exploring while being extremely careful until I stumbled upon this room full of more delicious cave vines and enough iron to finally finish my armor. After collecting it all, I tried to get closer to the surface, only to be walled off by yet another huge pile of spiders. I blocked myself off in an area while using some cobble, and while doing that, I learned that I could use stalagmites, or stalactites, whichever are on the floor. I don't know. Anyways, I could hit spiders with them. So I placed out my furnace again, and I began smelting so I could get myself some pants, which for some reason seems to be a reoccurring theme on the channel. I never wear pants. Once it finished smelting, I made myself some glorious pants, and finally I had a basic level of protection. So now that I had full armor of some kind and food, technically, it was now time to make my great push to escape. And boy was I getting nowhere. I sat here for a good 5 minutes straight, slowly cleaning up spiders, special spiders, and more spiders. And just when I thought I could progress, I ran into an elite spider. And those guys do not mess around. They are terrifying. I pushed up while killing each new spider that approached me, JoJo style, and then I noticed the elite spider all the way down another hallway, and I was not having it, so I blocked it off so that way I could mine some more iron before I could finally get out of this gross, sticky, nasty cave. Now that I was pretty much free, I started digging the dirt above me until finally I was free of my prison and back on the surface, which was also a prison in a different kind of way. However, I still needed food and the sun was starting to set again, and I kind of prefer seeing what's trying to kill me, so I hobbled my way back to the city where I accidentally left my purple bed several days before, which probably would have been useful for trying to sleep in the caves, but doesn't matter. Today, after waking up from my beautiful night's sleep full of hissing, I picked up my bed and headed over to the nearby spot where I saw some exposed uranium ore that I could definitely use to increase my defenses. After mining it, I noticed even more hiding out in this surface level cave system. Honestly, kind of ironic, this ore was almost as good as diamond and spawned basically in plain sight. But you know what? I need all the help I could get, so I will not be complaining. After mining more of the uranium, I got a bit quirky and relatable by going a bit further down where I struck the motherlode of iron. This stuff was everywhere. By the time I was done cleaning up the iron, I ended up with a clean 47 more ore. And while down here, I also noticed this structure that I originally thought was a dungeon with some easy ways to get loot from chests against the walls. However, instead, it turned out to be a large minecart tunnel system. I explored it all the way until I hit a dead end, and at that moment, my hoarding instincts kicked in. I began borrowing all of the golden power rails and regular rails so I could make my own minecart system whenever I find a good place to call home. I continued on exploring these tunnels while borrowing more rail until I kind of got bored of it, while also running out of inventory to put said rail. Plus, I kind of also noticed that this thing was like never ending. It just kept going and going and going. Finally, I came across this area in the tunnels with free glowstone that of course I took, being the gentleman that I am. And while doing so, I also uncovered even more uranium. However, this is when things got scary. I shot my uranium goo, as weird as that is to say, and this time my health was permanently the color of poison. I guess that's what they meant when this weapon said it could irradiate people. At this point, I ran out of food, and I was getting pretty scared of dying Fallout style down here. So I made my way back to the surface and back to the city to sleep once more. After waking up the next day, I had hoped to no longer be irradiated, but sadly, I had zero luck. Perhaps I needed to eat or drink milk to cure it. Hopefully, it was not going to kill me. Or at least that's what I thought, because after closing out of my game to take a small break in real life, crazy that I actually have one of those, I came back and my health was just normal. So I guess, I don't know, crisis averted. So now that my little mine adventure was done and I was hungry again, it was time to head back to the much more spider heavy area of the world to begin harvesting more wheat. And boy, were things so much better. Regular spiders were now a lot less of my worries as I shoveled this bread into my mouth. After like 3 minutes straight of obtaining that grain, I was up to over a stack of bread. Things were going uphill and quickly. So what did I decide to do? Take risks, of course. With my food situated, the very first thing I did was head back to that tower I had passed several days ago when I couldn't handle the stronger spiders, and now I was much more prepared. I mean, probably not for the strongest ones, but honestly, I didn't care. I didn't have a ton to lose yet, and I just wanted to rob their chests for some dank loot. Sue me. And that was a lot easier said than done, because spiders spawning outside just constantly kept interfering. One by one, I began killing the long-legged spider guys, and they started dropping spider meat and skin. Honestly, they really shouldn't have. This is great. I love spider meat. It's very tasty. I spent pretty much an entire day here, and I didn't make a ton of progress. This wandering trader spawned in while I was fighting for my life, and while trying to see him, I was burned by this Endeavor wannabe spider and his stupid fire powers. After dipping in the water to cool off and eating to heal, I tried to right-click the trader, and instead I shot him in the face with my goo instead. At this point, it was dark and hard to see, so I placed my bed in the middle of the water, and I just slept my problems away, just like real life. Now, fully rested with visibility much higher, it was back to getting that loot, and things were getting messy. Sure, I was a little stronger now, but with how non-stop the onslaught of spiders really was, I had a long way to go to be able to take them all on. While fighting my way through these hordes, it was starting to feel like COD zombies, and with my durability and food, I was destined to run out of gear. During these fights, there was this insane spider who kept shooting fireballs everywhere, and I was having none of that. By the time I had gotten rid of him and his whole squad, I had found 2 pretty rare spider drops that I was going to need for the ultimate spider sword. These items were called spider fangs, and apparently they didn't stack, which made my already rough inventory problem even worse. But honestly, when you see this thing, you will know that everything was worth it. Anyways, I went back to the grind, getting inside of that tower, and I even broke the first spawner before being confronted with a long-legged spider that also shot me with arrows. At this point, I didn't know if they're supposed to do that or if it was a glitch, but either way, it still made my life equally a living hell. At this point, a whole army of spiders had respawned outside, and with the Boboi's help, they almost got me. Maybe I just wasn't ready to take on the even higher levels of these dungeons yet. I checked the condition of my armor, and things were not looking great. So for now, spiders, unfortunately, you win this round. It was time for me to retreat. I ran past the dungeons towards this new city, and along the way, I may have found a second dungeon where I pulled off the absolute heist of a century. I yoinked this pair of protection 4 chainmail leggings, and these boys massively improved my defense. Basically just iron armor with protection 4. As it started to get dark, I went inside one of the buildings because I wanted to borrow this brewing stand, but instead I found myself trapped by this crazy looking elite spider surrounded by a cloud of poison. While in here, I placed out my bed to sleep so I could get more light to figure out how to get away from this guy the next day. So it was now the morning of day 9, and this spider was camping me harder than a Call of Duty player in one of those buildings in Nuketown. I began sizing him up to see if I could win until I noticed he was an elite variant, and those guys were a lot more unpredictable and nasty. So while waiting for him to leave, I figured why not smelt more uranium so I could make myself a new pickaxe. After smelting and making my pickaxe, I noticed that the spider had left, and I decided, you know what, why not try to win at a game of range? So I ran outside and I took a pop shot at him with my sword before quickly hiding. And one by one, I kept playing this game of cat and mouse while struggling with the crazy lag that these cities can cause using, shaders, until I whittled him down to a sliver of health, and honestly, I wanted his loot. So I took a risk and I got a bit courageous and ran outside to take him out to dinner one last time. And this man dropped me 2 enchanted books, which after checking out were pretty much both useless. And to add insult to insult, he didn't even drop that much XP for me to enchant with. Anyways, though, with that victory behind me, I went back to my temporary hiding area of this day to smelt more of my iron so I could fix up my armor. I replaced my leggings and helmet, and while waiting for more to smelt, I began exploring the different levels of the building I was hiding in. And it was becoming very apparent why my game was lagging, because each floor had a lot of spiders waiting for my demise. I cleaned them out as much as I could, while continuing to climb up each floor until reaching the roof, where I was honestly just disappointed by the lack of loot. I spent the rest of the night trying to get to the downstairs basement to check for even more loot, but there were just so many spiders non-stop spawning down there, and because it was now nighttime, they were even more hostile. After slaying throughout the night, I had hit level 30, but unfortunately, I still couldn't sleep in my bed, because there were monsters nearby, almost like there was a pile of spiders directly underneath me or something. After waiting out the night, as the sun began rising, I was checking for different crafting recipes to help me survive, where I found this backpack that I could make, and all I needed was 4 leather. So I set out and began heading in a new direction. At first, things were pretty barren, with a few spiders hiding here and there. I did end up finding this barrel with some free fish inside, but I didn't really have any inventory space left, so I unfortunately had to just leave them there. After looting what fish I could, I moved on to a more dense part of this laggy city area, and this is where things turned into The Last of Us. This place was packed with more spiders, including another elite monstrosity. Never so quickly in my life have I turned around and noped my way out of there. Honestly, the city life was never really for me. I began backtracking towards a similar direction that I had started in until I found myself back at that spider tower that I drive-by swiped the protection 4 set of leggings from. I figured while in the neighborhood I'd come back for more, and this time I managed to also break the spawner in the ground floor area before being backed off by even more long legs. At this point, I felt it was time to move on. I spent a few more minutes dealing with these annoying special spiders that kept trying to burn me alive, and shortly after, I found myself running around in the dark forest full of even more spiders. I stopped by this weird little campsite that had a toolbox apparently, but I didn't have enough time to loot it because of all the, you guessed it, spiders. Because spiders are fast. While continuing to run through the forest, I ended up finding this decayed looking building where I found the holy grail 2 out of the 4 leather I needed for my backpack. I struggled to yoink them while being jumped by even more spiders before I was forced to keep on moving for a spot to sleep to get some visibility back. I kept moving until I saw a few signs of life in the distance. I made my way up to the spot in the water where I could finally sleep, and I'm pretty sure I made my way right back to spawn. I ended up running in one big circle. On the next beautiful, sunny, definitely non-spider infested day, I was ready to check out this area again because this time I could actually survive the spiders more, which meant only one thing: loot. A lot of it. Or so I had thought, because this biome was just insane. The spiders spawned absolutely everywhere. And I was being jumped by a special spider after another special spider. They would not leave me alone. At one point, while trying to cross this bridge, a haste spider absolutely rammed me where the sun did not shine. I ended up using the nearby river as cover to take him out, but it was clear that I was not going to get that loot anytime today. So that kind of sucks, but bright side, I was now back in the wheat biome where I could get more food. I grabbed almost a stack before I noticed another elite spider not so far away. So being the massive 5-head brain me that I am, I began taking pop shots at this guy across the river. I sat here doing this until he was one shot away, so I figured, why not get closer and use the water to take the final swing, right? No, this ended up going horribly wrong. Somehow his poison hit me from long range, along with what felt like potions of harming. It was safe to say that I should probably, at this point, leave elite spiders alone. So after getting my health fixed, I found myself back at the spider tower I had attacked before, and the trader was still hanging around. And that's when I had the perfect plan. I began slaying the 2 llamas in the hopes of getting leather. And boom, llama number 2 dropped exactly what I needed. I swam back out in the water and made a small wool island where I could craft my brand new backpack. I placed out the crafting table and swam over to get some nearby sand to smelt for the 2 tanks that I was going to need. So it was now the next day, and I had my glass to craft both tanks, and I was going to craft the sleeping bag. But apparently I specifically needed red wool to make it. But no worries, because a short way down the river I grabbed myself some red flowers and boom, I now had a sleeping bag and I could make the backpack. That is, if I had gold. Funny thing is, I actually found some gold, but didn't have enough time to take it because of all the spiders. And I'm pretty sure the only place I could get some easy gold would involve me going back to that cursed spawn biome full of spiders. I prepared my inventory and made a replacement uranium sword for my almost broken one, and I even tested it out to see if I could shoot the attack more using more swords. But sadly, the refresh counted for both of them. Anyways, it was time to start my mission. I began running full speed towards the first campsite, except the game had other ideas for me, because this magnetic spider pulled me in like an anime fan to Crunchyroll. Luckily, the spider wasn't very strong, so after crushing it in its tracks, I was able to move on. I checked the first campsite, which had nothing left, moved on to the second one, where I was able to check all of the chests this time, but there wasn't really anything of value inside. After looting site number 2, I dodged even more spiders while checking the last 2 spots with 0 luck. So with those all checked off, it was finally time to go in the direction I haven't been yet. An area that I would like to call the Forest of Lag, because with shaders on, my PC was not having a good time here. I kept moving through the cover of trees until I saw this new building that looked perfect to catch a break from the spiders in. Plus, this place actually had pigs. It was the first set of animals I could get in the entire world. I went inside and climbed up each floor to the very top where I found the One Piece. And this time, it did not take 1,000+ episodes later. I found an almost full enchantment setup with a chest full of food and a golden apple inside. This place was like winning the lottery, only without losing like 80% of it to taxes. Today was a great day. So now that I finally had a place that I could call a base of operations, it was time to get to work making this area spider-proof around the tower. I made myself an iron axe and a shovel to make path blocks because these boys stop mobs from spawning on them no matter where you are. And spiders need a 2x2 area to spawn in, so hopefully if I spam them around the bottom, then maybe I can get a little bit of a safe area. However, I kid you not, the very second I stepped outside, I was bombarded with non-stop spider aggression. It's like they knew what my IRL kill count was of their kind. No comment. I did a lap around the base of the tower while being ganged up on and lagging until I was finally able to get back inside of the base. This was not going to be easy. And easy it was not, because the longer I stayed here, it just got laggier and laggier. So I decided to step outside and this was my mistake because there were so many spiders literally everywhere. I ended up running for my life. I actually didn't have enough time to get back up my stairs because more spiders were camping it. As I ran around, I used my shovel to turn as much dirt into path blocks as I could to possibly reduce the places that spiders could spawn in, but honestly, this was not working out. Finally, I decided to just back off a bit to a nearby field where in the distance I saw one of the best items literally in the game, a godsend. I found a waystone that would allow me to teleport to other waystones that I find and set up anywhere in this chaotic spider-filled world. This was perfect. Plus, this spot was close enough to a lot of different structures, including my new tower, so it could potentially be the perfect place to call home. But once again, with theme of the video, the spiders would not leave me alone. I built straight up with my water bucket, and before I could even jump, they were on top of me. After catching a break, I went around tilling as much of the dirt as I could to reduce more spawns, and I hastily set a waypoint using the map mod so I could come back here in the future to work on a base. After this, I went through the great struggle back to the tower in the dark while also lagging, and apparently having lost half of my armor. By the time I got back, I noticed that my armor was devastated. 2 of my pieces were missing, and the others did not look good. Not to mention, I only had enough iron left to replace what I lost. Meaning, it looks like before making a new base, I was going to need to go mining more. The next day, after waiting out the night, my FPS was getting worse by the second. Between all of the spiders and this forest, even my dedicated PC could barely handle it. I went downstairs and began fighting my way to get outside, because if I was going to mine, that meant I needed wood for ladders. I pushed my way through all 20 FPS I was getting until I found myself at the much safer edge by the river, where in between spider combat, I chopped as many trees as I could. During this, I was constantly interrupted by more surprise friends, but luckily, trees were a single chop at the bottom to collect here, because if they weren't, I honestly don't know how I was going to get wood. In between all the spider fighting and the tree chopping, I also finally had this chance to rob this nearby grave of a yet another golden apple and some other free resources. My life is good when everything is free. It's almost like stop signs. They're just like free. It's crazy. I spent the rest of today pretty much doing the exact same thing. By the time the night had fallen, I made pretty good progress with deforestation, and the place was still equally just as laggy. But hey, by the time I was done, I now had 2.5 stacks of spruce wood, along with a ton of sticks, and 2 more broken pieces of armor. These spiders really know how to treat a gamer. While back at my base, I made myself a brand new chest plate with the last iron that I had. I put on my almost broken backup pants, and I prepared to go mining. I crafted my 2 stacks of ladders to go down into the mines, and I broke through the floor, not realizing that the pig stall was directly underneath. First, I blocked off the front so no more spiders could get in, and before I knew it, one of my 2 pig friends had already climbed up my stairs into my house. Not today. Anyways, I was now ready to get mining. I crafted 2 fence gates to stop the pigs from getting in, and I began digging straight down with a 2-block method so I would never fall into any caves. While digging down, I began hitting different veins of iron, quickly refilling my supply, and I even found some rubies along the way. While continuing downward, I didn't place any torches, because in this world they go out over time, and spiders could still spawn even in the lit areas, so it didn't really matter. I did, however, make sure there weren't any 2x2 block areas where spiders could spawn, so this place would at least be kind of safe. I kept mining further down until I finally hit one of the best things that vanilla Minecraft has ever added. I broke my way into a geode. I absolutely love amethyst, I love calcite, and smooth basalt. These blocks are gorgeous, and I will 100% be building with them in my new base. But for now, I found myself back in the mines. I very carefully scoped out the cave, and there didn't really seem to be many spiders. Luckily, spiders down here spawn a lot less often the further you go. At least the less dangerous ones do. But anyways, I had already found more iron and even more gold that I needed for the backpack. Plus, I also found out that ruby armor is absolutely cracked and is also stronger than diamond. Plus, it mentions weakening enemies with a full set, which is pretty big brain, not gonna lie. So with my goals in mind, I set out gathering nearby coal and iron while exploring, and there didn't really seem to be many spiders, which kind of seemed off. And that's when I ran into this absolute Giga Chad huge cave centipede. Honestly, I didn't know these things even existed, but that did not stop him from striking my health down in an instant. Obviously, I was just a side character, and he was the protagonist because his plot armor was massive. I very quickly hid myself away as his overpowered poison brought me down to half a heart. I really need to find cows or become immune to poison somehow, because I feel like this might become a reoccurring theme. For the next few days, I spent some quality time down here in the mines. For some reason, almost no spiders were spawning, and I was loving this opportunity. I was mining tons of iron, coal, gold, I got some redstone, and I even found lapis, so now I could start enchanting my gear. While down here, I found this small campsite with some free loot, including the newest music disc that I didn't take. And I'm not sorry, because Pig Step is still the best. Bite me in the comments. After enough time, I found 2 separate veins of diamonds down here that netted me a sweet 8 diamondes, which honestly were probably going to be used to create that webbed calamity sword that I mentioned before. At this point, there was more that I wanted to actually explore, but my inventory was thicker than a Pixar mom. So it was back to Spider City I went. I climbed up the mines and back to the tower to smelt and clean up my inventory for the rest of day 18. After coming back with that haul, the next day was huge. I placed out 3 furnaces and began smelting my iron and gold, and while waiting on them, I began checking the enchantment table for different enchants since I now had lapis. And boy, could things not have gone better. I checked out all of my pickaxe types to see which I should enchant, and it looked like diamond was still the best. I crafted a pick using 3 of my diamonds, and after giving it a level 3 enchant, I had gotten Unbreaking 3, Efficiency 4. This pick was a beast. Right after this, I checked on the enchantment for my sword, and I swear this is the only time in my Minecraft life I have ever been excited to see Bane of Arthropods 5. Bane of Arthropods 5. I jumped on that enchantment quicker than Crypto Bros jump to new scams. Things were really looking up from here. After getting those upgrades, I grabbed some gold from the furnace because it was finally time to create the backpack I've been trying to make from the start. And this thing was a game changer. At first, I was kind of confused because after putting it into my extra gear slot, I couldn't access it, but after a bit of figuring it out, this thing was insane. It comes with a built-in crafting table, tons of storage space, and even tanks to hold liquids like water, lava, and other unspecified liquids that we won't be talking about. This backpack literally had me speechless. So now that I had a bunch of upgrades, I figured it was, time to take them out for a quick spin. I went down outside, and this sword was amazing. With the radiation sword, I could now one-shot all regular spiders. The tables had literally turned. I spent pretty much the entire night just out here getting some payback while it was easy. Not to mention, I got lots and lots of XP. While down here, I even found this trader that had spawned in who was trying to sell me cockroaches and globes. It's like your average flea market in Florida. So now it was day 20 and I was already moving up in the world, but I still didn't have a real base area that was spider-proof yet. And I was going to need one, and quickly, because as the days go on, the spiders will get more and more intense. So after a little prep, I found myself back outside debating if this spot was good enough, because honestly, I wasn't really a huge fan of it being downhill, because all the spiders nearby could just kind of jump me, and not to mention, it was near the super dense forest full of lag. So because I haven't quite decided on where I wanted to live yet, I figured, you know, why not explore the nearby terrain instead and see what I could find. I spent most of this day just not finding much, minus the piles of spiders, until right before the sun began setting, I found the most ominous looking castle in the distance. I very carefully made my way inside while dodging the hole in the ground, which led down to probably death. And while here, I kind of just spent the night exploring around this place. And although there were like a lot of chests, it was mostly just a few iron or gold ingots here and there, along with a bunch more books and paper that I could use for the enchantment setup, I guess. But besides that, there wasn't really much going on. I kept exploring this castle room by room until I stumbled upon this Walmart brand looking throne room. On the surface, this place didn't really look like it had any real loot, but I knew better than that. My loot senses were tingling, or as I wrote in my notes, tringling. I checked behind the throne, and this hidden chest had 2 diamond helmets, and one of them had protection 1. I put on the better helmet after stealing all that dank loot, but I wasn't done yet. I knew there had to be something else. I kept checking around the room until I found yet another hidden chest, and inside of this bad boy was a diamond axe and a whole bunch more gold. After finishing up the throne room, I made my way up to the roof of this tower and began looking the next tower over. Inside of each room was the typical more iron scraps here and there, along with a couple more mob spawners, but overall, nothing really that impressive. At this point, I had pretty much explored the entire surface area of the castle, but I wasn't done yet, because I still had to go down to the dungeon. Cue dramatic noise. No, really, where's the dramatic noise? I looked into one of the holes in the center of this tower I was in, and at the bottom was a hidden chest inside of water. I made my way down by using the sidewall where I accidentally revealed the spider spawner infested cellar. I checked the first chest inside of the water, and this bad boy was plump with loot to be had. Honestly, I was so lucky that I had the traveler's backpack because there was no way I could fit all this dank loot into my inventory. And you know I am a loot goblin. So after dumping my inventory into my backpack, I began clearing the cellar of all the different spiders, and there was just so much loot down here, like RO craft levels of loot. There were chests everywhere with iron, gold, redstone, lapis, and a pretty decadent assortment of other things that were also now mine, with the ton of free barrels that I took. And even behind those were more chests with more loot. I finished up the main room before starting to check the others, and that's when things kind of got scary. I ended up killing the special spider who had the ability infested, which means silverfish, and apparently half of the cellar was built with monster blocks. So the second I hit one silverfish, I got swarmed by tons. These guys were eating away my health so quickly. I pillared up in fear using stone as fast as I could, and I could have sat here for who knows how long, just picking them off one by one. But instead, Minecraft RNGesus had a different plan. I kid you not, every single one of those like 30 silverfish all fell into this single block hole, and I just covered them up. As long as I don't break any more blocks, they won't break out, and I was just kind of Gucci. Normally, problems like that in real life do not solve themselves that easily. But this is Minecraft. This is better than real life. After temporarily solving that little problem, I began checking out those side rooms that I had mentioned before. I climbed up this ladder only to be greeted by this heavenly room full of bookshelves. I checked the chests inside, and they were also cracked. Inside this single chest was an enchanted book with Feather Falling 4 for boots, and a Power 3 enchanted book for a future bow. As if a bow isn't going to work in this world full of spiders that are super fast anyways, but you know what? Doesn't matter. After looting the chest, I found this odd pedestal with a book inside that I low-key thought was a trap. I checked underneath it before moving it, and nothing. So, with that kind of being a dud, I cleared out the room and I stole all of the books for future bookshelves since I didn't really have Silk Touch, and I was just on my way after this. I entered the next room, broke the 2 spawners, and broke into the obvious looking casket And boy, did grave robbing never feel so good. Because inside that grave was not one, but 2 god apples, along with even more dank loot. After robbing what felt like the last of the rooms, I began breaking walls just in case I missed something when I stumbled on this new hidden room with this chest full of goodies, including another diamond. After looting what I had now thought was the real final room, I began looking for the easiest exit until I noticed the staircase that I also apparently missed. And after taking this bad boy up, it led to a hidden kitchen. I checked all the chests and they were just full of different foods, including another golden apple and regular carrots, which were perfect to begin farming with so I could begin breeding pigs. Unfortunately, I couldn't take most of the food because at this point my inventory and my bag were now very full, so I just kind of left it all behind and I continued through the door back up to the surface. And the second I opened that door, I saw him in the corner. This place had a skeleton horse. In this world, horses were rare in general, but skeleton horses were super rare. And I decided that then and there, this was going to be my new friend, and I needed to liberate him from his prison. But first, I still needed to find a place to liberate him too. So for now, I left a waypoint here letting me know that he was also here, and I went to sleep to get some daylight back to make my way back to my base the next day. On the next day after leaving the castle, I was quickly realizing that the nearby terrain wasn't much better for places to build a fortress. There were more dense forests to the left, and after changing directions, even more cities to the right. I began maneuvering around the city until I saw this odd structure that was shaped like a cobra. As much as I knew it was probably a trap, my curiosity got the better of me. I walked around the back to check things out, where I found an acacia chest without that much inside, but it was just out in the open. After checking the contents, I decided I should maybe build up to the top and see what you could find. And what did you know? Inside of the head was a chest with another god apple inside, along with even more free real estate gold. My defenses were moving up day by day. And speaking of days, the rest of today was pretty tame. Surprisingly, I ended up in one of the safest biomes around because all of the path blocks and leaves limited spider spawns completely. At this point, the sun was escaping me and I had found another spider tower that I was now much more prepared to take on. So once the sun had set, I slept out in the field, excited for what tomorrow was going to bring. After waking up the next morning and scooping my bed off the ground, I was ready to take on the spider tower. Without as many regular spider spawns around, I could focus more on the big boys without all the interruptions. I ran straight in there and I began breaking spawners, floor by floor. The first 3 areas were overall pretty okay. The spiders still did serious damage to me, but by now, I also did serious damage to them. Unfortunately, the chests were not really worth that much. That's technically not why I was here. I was here to get the last spider fang that I needed to craft the legendary webbed calamity sword. And speaking of calamity, Team Spider began catching up to me in this fight. I ended up jumping down to the next floor to break a spawner, only to get rammed by this whole squadron of hard-hitting spiders. Well, in the moment, I panicked and I absolutely choked by dropping my sword with a full inventory. Honestly, things were not looking that good, so just in case, I did what I had to do and I ate one of my 3 god apples. After getting my health back and grabbing my sword, I began cleaning up the mess that I had made for myself until I was mostly safe. After that, I was not making that mistake again, so to break the last spawner down below, I lit one of the TNT from the castle I had looted, and I cleaned up the remaining spiders. After that chaos was controlled Shadow the Hedgehog style, I noticed I had hit a cave with a singular ruby ore along with possibly other loot. However, it turned out this was not the final floor, because out of the corner of my eye, I saw another long-legged spider trying to finesse his way into my life. After erasing him from existence, I not so casually noticed the 20+ spiders that had now piled up below me, but not before finding what I had come here for. The singular spider fang that I needed had finally dropped. I organized what was left on my inventory, and as I was preparing to drop more TNT, my razor mouse disconnected on the spot, almost causing me to lose everything. After fighting with my mouse, I set up the TNT and I dropped it on the spawner below while preparing for the onslaught of spiders likely headed my way. And boy, was there a lot of them. I sat here for a good 10 minutes, pushing through the final 2 layers of spawns until finally I was at the bottom. And overall, the loot for these chests were complete garbage. But there was still this strange stone-looking thing in the center. And not gonna lie, I was pretty scared to click it, because overall this area was giving me mob tower vibes similar to those found in the mod pack Arlcraft, meaning this could be a boss. After preparing myself mentally, I ate a golden apple and broke the stone egg, and what came out of this was terrifying. I did decent damage to this thing, but with a mere couple of hits, I was almost dead. I fled for my life through the caves, and he was lightning McQueen fast. I ran into a small corner and I blocked myself in, but he started hitting me through the wall. So I had to start digging, and I kid you not, 1 more second and I would have been dead. This thing was scary. I sat here for a bit healing and thinking of a plan, and that's when I unfortunately decided that I needed to eat a second god apple. This thing just did too much damage to me. After eating the apple, I broke out, and even with resistance, he still hit like a dump truck. But with my crazy Bane of Arthropods 5, I was able to slay this beast at last. And for some reason, he dropped blaze rods and netherwort, which conveniently enough were perfect for making potions. After stuffing the winnings of my battle into my inventory and catching my breath for a second, I noticed this blessing directly from RNGesus himself. I had found a vein of rubies. After mining them, I had enough for a ruby chestplate that has ridiculous defense. Plus now my drip was so intense that I had an aura around me. Anyways though, while down here, I found myself surrounded by ores prime for the taking, and I couldn't resist, even though I still needed a base. Yes, I know. I spent literally an entire day down here harvesting tons of iron. I got lots of uranium. I found Monsterium, which is also super useful, and the coveted rubies that I needed to finish off a full set of ruby armor. And within no time, I found exactly that. I made a crafting bench, and 1 by 1, I crafted the remaining pieces of armor that I needed with the exact amount of rubies. After putting them on, my defense was so insane, and honestly, the armor just looked really cool. I was very happy. But even though I was happy and I had obtained exactly what I came here for, I wasn't done yet. I kept mining more ores, looking for more rubies, for tools to get the supposed full set defense buff, until I saw this chest that was more obvious bait than a tweet about the new Harry Potter game. I mined the iron right underneath it, and it turns out I was right. There was TNT waiting to blow me up. After removing the TNT, I checked the chest, which ended up having various fish, and it turned out this is some kind of miner's camp, with the second chest full of not only gold, but also these gold pieces of armor with like perfect enchantments. If only I had some way to actually take those. I camped here for a bit while condensing all the various golds I had until I was ready to go. And by go, I meant more mining, even though my inventory was entirely stuffed. I ended up finding another chest area with a bunch more TNT and 22 gunpowder, and I was ambushed by these 2 mimic chests who had 0 knockback. They would not take any damage, it seemed like. But after finally toppling the hierarchy of mimics, they dropped me my very first relic items that could be equipped alongside my armor. Unfortunately, one was a hat that increased trading with villagers, who basically don't exist in this world, and the other one were night vision goggles, which were kind of cool, but low-key also kind of useless because of my shader settings, which if you're wondering what they are in the comments, don't ask, because I honestly don't know how I got my shaders to make dark areas look like this. Somehow I did it. I don't know what it is. I've just been copying the settings. After getting those, I originally intended to leave these caves. However, if you know me, I am a loot goblin and I cannot resist resources. So instead, I stayed down here hitting the absolute jackpot. I struck diamond ore after diamond ore after diamond ore, and these caves just didn't end. And they were full of more iron, there was more gold, and I even found more rubies. I kept pushing on until this fight with the second mimic that dropped me this relic pair of boots that allows me to run on water. Super cool power, although in a world infested with spiders, not quite as much as you would think. By the time I was pretty much done with this trip, I had almost a stack of diamonds along with tons more loot, and it was now the end of day 30, and it was time to head to the surface. And at the time, I didn't know this yet, but every 30 in-game days, the spiders began mutating and things got a lot worse. These mutant spiders will now spawn more and more as time goes on, making this world a living hell. And I was now heading to the surface, completely oblivious of what I was about to face. Things were getting interesting. It was now day 31, and something felt off. The spiders on the surface were different. There were now those long-legged spiders everywhere, along with mutant spider cows who were super fast and these large, gray, weird-looking ones. I began slicing and dicing the gray spider, who ended up being quite tanky, and once he died, he let out an army of smaller, hyper-fast spiders that hit way harder than I feel like they honestly should have. This spider literally had like an egg sac inside of him, and that very thought just gives me these gross chills, even now reading this. Ugh. Spiders are so nasty. Anyways, conditions on the surface, it was safe to say, were getting a lot worse. And I still did not have a safe place to call home besides my tower yet. So for now, that's exactly where I was headed to clean up my inventory and hopefully get some cool enchants to get my armor stronger to fight back against these spiders. After getting back to the tower, hidden in the laggy forest, I began organizing my copious amounts of loot into my chest dump areas. And honestly, just look at this dang loot. Almost a stack of diamonds and plenty of iron and gold, along with 11 more rubies. I made it out of that place like a millionaire never mind. After getting all this loot out of my inventory, I spent the rest of tonight working with enchants, and let's just say things didn't go exactly as I expected. The first enchantment for my chest piece said I would lose health after dying with it equipped, which kind of scared me, even though this was a hardcore world, which meant one death was it, but honestly, whatever. I kept trying for better enchants, and I guess, honestly, it could be worse. This enchantment called Pestilence causes damage to any passive mobs that are nearby, which is literally the worst thing I've ever seen. Why would I want that? Unless I was trying to have like an AFK cow farm or something. But anyways, I kept enchanting until I finally got Protection 4 for my chest piece with that useless death enchantment. I also got Protection 3 on Breaking 3 for my boots, and an enchantment called Vitae, if that's how you say it, 3 that gives me an extra heart of health on both my legs and my helmet. Plus, for some weird reason, every time I put on the final piece of ruby armor that completes the set, it plays this really cool sound. With my armor even more powerful than before, I began constructing the Great Webbed Calamity Sword. I crafted the handle from the spider skin and a stick, I made the 3 infested diamonds, and I began putting together the webbed iron ingots that I also needed. However, I ended up running out of string. So since there was no daylight, I finished dumping my backpack out so I could set off outside to start owning some spiders. Except while checking my backpack, it actually turned out I had 2 more stacks of string just sitting in there. I knew that I had string somewhere. There was 0 chance. So using that string, I made the remaining ingot and I crafted myself the sword. And boy, does this thing just look and make you feel powerful. After crafting it, I went to see what kind of tier 3 enchantment I could get for it, but once again, Pestilence. Useless. So I made myself a grinder to reset the enchantments in between, but since I was now down to level 31, this meant I only got 1 more tier 3 enchantment shot. 1 opportunity to capture it. I enchanted it, and all I got was Berserker 2, which increases your damage the lower your health. Honestly, pretty disappointing, but without enough XP, I couldn't really complain, and with my inventory now clean, I decided to go outside and take it out for a new test ride, even without the good enchantments. I began swinging at a bunch of spiders, and not gonna lie, without the Bane of Arthropods 5 that was on my uranium sword, this boss sword did less damage than the current sword I was using. So I was back inside and testing out more enchantments on a second uranium sword to see if I could repair the first one. And I ended up getting this enchantment that supposedly increases XP while occasionally giving me exhaustion. I didn't really know what that meant, so I figured, you know, why not take it outside for a test? And let me say, I barely noticed a difference, with basically no exhaustion happening, minus my mental state that is, but that's not relevant. And I guess also my FPS. It's like a PowerPoint presentation here. Look at this. But anyways, these spiders were far more intense, and because it was nighttime, even the regular spiders began lunging after me. So after enough testing, I struggled to get my way back inside of my tower, while pushing through the piles of spiders, so that way I could check on my weapons once more, and from that alone, this new sword was already super damaged. With all these spiders, I'm really going to need Unbreaking 3 for everything. While I was out fighting, one of the spiders also dropped this really cool enchantment that increases your mining speed the longer I mine, that I decided to add to my pickaxe, so that way when I'm mining down in the mines and spiders are trying to attack my butt cheeks, I can at least get things moving faster, you know? After this, I made myself a 3rd uranium sword, popped into the enchantment table, and I could get looting 3, which at first sounded super exciting until I realized the only thing I was gonna loot is like spiders. On the next day, I added the 2 swords together at my anvil and named them Raid, not Shadow Legends in parentheses. Because honestly, I don't know why I did this, but I just thought it was like a hilarious play on like a can of Raid Spider Killer, but you know what? Perfect name. Don't care. Let me know what you would have named it in the comments. Anyways, today was the day that I was going to find myself a place to start spider proofing, which I know I say that all the time. And honestly, I made it a lot harder for myself by waiting this long because there's going to be spiders everywhere now, more than there already was. So I set out once again looking for the perfect place to call home. The next few days, I traveled across the lands, searching far and wide, with little luck. As I moved further from my tower, I began finding some of the most gorgeous forests I've ever seen, and ironically, they also made maneuvering around spiders even less feasible. While out here, I tried to loot the different structures I found, but overall, there wasn't really much. I got a spider to drop me this god tier Fortune 3 enchantment book, which is perfect for mining. I struggled to try and loot this trapped chest, while this other special spider tried to burn the forest down. I continued moving on to where I found this kind of magical feeling enchanted forest area, and this place was really pretty to be around. The water was filled with lily pads and soul lanterns floating above them, which was one of the only ways I could get lanterns in this, because you need real lit torches to craft them, and all the trees had tons of cobwebs inside of them, really fitting for the whole spider theming. Eventually, while struggling my way through this place, I found this really odd looking dungeon that I was debating exploring, but with all these spiders slapping me around, I instead opted to sleeping in my bed above. And honestly, boy am I glad that I did this, because upon waking up, there was a message in my chat saying the blood moon had risen. If you know what the blood moon is, it's this event at night where mobs spawn like crazy, even more than right now, and you cannot sleep through it. I began running back to my base, tower thing, I guess, full speed, because in the odd chance that you do get to sleep before the blood moon actually spawns, it instead spawns the very next night. And there was no way I was going to find myself out here in the stew during that. Fast forward, and I was almost back home when I found this interesting looking camp. And at first, I was hoping to find some villagers, but no, things were much, much worse. This camp was an anime convention worth of smelly gamer pillagers. And I'm gonna be honest, I spent a lot of time running around this place trying to loot it, but the longer I stayed, the more pillagers and spiders there were, and they ended up ganging up together to defeat me like I was some boss from World of Warcraft. So finally, after noticing just how much of my armor durability was getting destroyed, I continued back to my tower, which conveniently was only a couple 100 blocks away. Turns out this camp was right next to home. I began taking a small detour to dodge the area with heavy foliage because of all the lag and spiders, until I saw the love of my life in the distance. Finally, I had found a second waystone. With this bad boy, I could place both of them down and transport myself from one location to another using XP. More importantly, dodging all of the spiders in between. Only problem was my inventory was full and I was panicking because these damn spiders would not leave me alone. So out of desperation, I opened my backpack, dumped a row of items in as fast as I could to pick up the waystone, and I quickly headed back home in the hopes that I had actually picked it up, because I didn't even notice. And I kid you not, the very second I was safe and sound at the top of my tower, the blood moon had risen. After spending the night in my tower AFK, I ended up having time to think about how I was going to tackle my armor breaking so fast because of all these spider beatings I've been taking. I spent a bunch of time looking through items that I could craft since, you know, there's pretty much no way of getting mending inside of this world until I stumbled upon something interesting. I was looking at the relics, or whatever you call them, since I honestly don't know, and I began searching for rings. And there is this item called a Ring of Repair. And this thing costed some absolute loot to craft. However, once you equip it in your inventory, it would start repairing my items. Apparently, this bad boy repairs items and armor in my inventory every 5 seconds by X amount of durability. I don't really know what the X was, but after putting it on, I couldn't really tell if it did anything, so I added an extra mod to the mod pack so that way I could see durabilities. And yeah, this thing was working and repairing my swords first. Only problem now was that all of my tools were missing a lot of durability, and I was scared that my armor could still break before it even fixed the tools. So being the massive brain that I am, I put all of my tools in a chest, and I sat here AFKing with the ring on so it would begin fixing my armor. Also, not gonna lie, I was kinda worried this item might have been too overpowered, but with it only doing one item at a time, low-key, this thing kinda sucked. So after AFKing, I got the genius idea to try and create more of them, so that way I could speed up the process. I grabbed all of the raw iron from my mining trips, which ended up being so much more than I thought, and I crafted a few blast furnaces to get more iron so I could craft more anvils to make more rings. After getting the blast furnaces going, I sat here moving resources around, and I crafted an additional 2 more rings, and based on what I observed, each ring did add more repairing per second, although kind of in a weird way. Each ring was now on average giving 2 durability each time they repair, but sometimes they would also give like an extra 3rd one. Honestly, I had no clue what was happening, but my repairs were now actually pretty decent. And once caught up, these things will be super useful going on from here. I made myself 2 more rings, and now each tick was giving me a total of 10 durability. These things were a little pricey to make, but after the massive mining trip that I just went on, it was probably not going to be an issue for a while. So, just like any other rich person, I hoarded and wasted my wealth. After repairing everything in my inventory using the new rings and waiting for the sun to rise, since I couldn't really sleep with all the spiders, I set back out towards the pillager outpost from before. And today, I swear, everything was against me. The forest was uber laggy, and after getting out and finding the small campsite with some easy loot, I was jumped by a pillager with a banner and a spider with harming potions, all at once. I tried to back off, but my mouse decided it wanted to also lag, and honestly, I was just done with it here. I wish Minecraft with shaders and mod packs would just run better. This is with a super low render distance, by the way. On a 3090 with a Ryzen 9 5950X. After that mini crisis was averted, I decided to stop back by the pillager camp just for funsies. There were no funsies. I fled that pile of mans while heading over to this nearby bridge where there was an old cemetery underneath. This was kind of like a metaphor if you think about it, but anyways, I started robbing all of these graves, and I was getting gold, golden apples, food, leather, and I was going to steal the anvils too, until I was surprise attacked by this fat spider that gave me a literal mini heart attack. I kept pushing on throughout this day, finding an identical tower to the one I lived in inside of this forest, and for some brilliant reason, the very second I stepped foot in this forest. No, the very second my pinky toe, or my big toe, just went boop on a single pixel of the blocks, my frame rate became a literal slideshow. I did manage to get to the top, but instead of there being an enchantment table, I instead found a chest with some more golden apples inside and a brewing stand full of potions. At this point, it was getting dark outside and the spiders were closing in again, so I struggled back through the lag and ran all the way back home to my temporary tower, where I slept down in the mines because the spiders would not let me sleep above. It was now day 40, and while out in the nearby dead field area, or whatever it was called, I found the perfect location to finally make a safe base. This little area has the high ground so I could see everything around me, and I still have access to all of the nearby resources. So I began clearing this area out bit by bit. For this spot to be even remotely safe, I was going to have to level it out, replace all of the blocks with dirt blocks, and turn the dirt into path blocks so no spiders can spawn inside of the camp, and I was getting right down to that process. I wanted this place as safe as could be as quickly as possible. Except for some wonderful reason, none of the blocks here could be mined that quickly with any tools. So I was just stuck beating the ground with my bare hands. Axes didn't work. Shovels didn't work. Pickaxes didn't work. I tried everything. I think I tried a hoe at one point, which is just stupid. After clearing out a bit of the land and adding some fences, I was now back to my base to get a ton of dirt from the mines, where it was safer. Except on the way there, I stumbled upon chickens. A group of chickens were just waiting for me here. I very quickly beat some grass for some seeds, and I led them over to my brand new base, where I also fenced them in. It was almost like it was meant to be. I grabbed some more seeds from the chest, and I made the very first chicken baby of this world. And, should I tell them, or should you? After getting chickens Ed, Edd, and Eddy style, I ran back to my tower to look for more dirt. Upon climbing up my ladder, I was jump scared by this special spider lurking in my loot room. After taking him to dinner, he dropped this beautiful enchanted book called Absorber that honestly sounded kind of insane. This bad boy takes status effects from mobs as a trade for durability. This book sounded pretty cracked, so I thought it was finally time to make myself a diamond shield to replace what I had. I also figured, why waste this opportunity? I could also enchant it. This bad boy got Vitality 3, which gives me more health. I added the Absorber book to it, and I rightfully named it Dommy Mommy Defender. Don't judge me. I don't know why I named it that. Anyways, I equipped this bad boy, and it gave me 4 more hearts of health. This shield was a godsend. With my newly upgraded shield at my side, I spent the next few days excavating dirt from the underground area above my mines, away from the spiders, and laying out the perimeter for my brand new compound. I began adding fencing around the edges, and originally I had thought this area was actually pretty small, but at this point I had already blown through all of the dirt I had, and I was only about 1/3 of the way done. As always, I overestimate the amount of work that I can get done inside one of these videos. I turned all of the remaining dirt into paths in the meantime, so they don't spawn any more spiders, and I went to sleep for the night. After waking up, I was in need of more dirt, and honestly, I wanted to speed up this process. I began heading back to the tower before I ran into this beautiful guy. I mean, just look at this deluxe model sheep. He was perfect. I grabbed wheat from my backpack and led him all the way back up to my platform next to my chickens, and I gave him a new home. Honestly, even having one sheep is super lucky right now, because there have been next to 0 animals inside of this world, at least ones that didn't have spider legs sticking out of them. But anyways, with mission sheep complete, it was back to my tower where I crafted a brand new diamond shovel. I tried enchanting it at first, but the options were pretty garbage, so I chose efficiency 2 as a backup, and I crafted shovel number 2. And this boy got decadent efficiency 4. I was going to use this shovel to do some work. This shovel was speeding up the process literally tenfold. After digging for the entire day, I headed back to finish up my compound foundation, but everything in the universe did not want me to. I fought so many special spiders that my inventory was full of enchanted books. Overall, I become so much stronger that I easily survived all of this, but one interesting thing to point out was that this spider with the poison, my shield's Absorber enchantment, entirely negated the poison effect by using its durability. And that is just insane to me. It sounds like I'm drinking like a bathtub of milk when this happens. After successfully fighting my way back to my base, I spent the next few days placing dirt and killing any spiders that got in my way. I was making such good progress until the game spawned wandering pillagers on my base. I very carefully took each of them out without hurting any of my animals, and apparently my shield's enchantment also works with them, because after killing the guy with the banner, I didn't get a raid debuff, which is kind of cool if I had actually had a village, but since I don't, it doesn't really matter. After filling in the dirt, I got back to more path making before this spider gave me a free show twerking on my fence. And as much as I hate to admit, I stared at this a lot more than I probably should have. The next day, I had finally finished leveling out my land, and all I needed was more wood for fences and a little more dirt, but out of nowhere, this absolute monstrosity of a special spider climbed up my wall, and this dude was insane. A new challenger had approached, and he was crazy hand level of difficult. I sat here dumping damage into him. I kept using both of my sword's abilities, and I even had to eat 2 of my apples, just in case to stay safe. While fighting the spider boss, he began pushing the fight over near my animals, and I desperately needed to get him away. About 10 plus more hits, and this menace was finally gone. And it wouldn't be any video without me mentioning that he was now just like that. Anyways, this boss dropped 4 enchanted books, and none of them were even worth that much. Also, I'm not quite sure if the spiders are spawning on my path blocks or not, but I don't really know where else they would be coming from, and I'm kind of getting scared that they were at this point, because that would make this place a lot less safe than I intended, and day 60 is getting a lot closer. But anyways, I dumped out my inventory and headed back to the nearby forest to begin collecting as much wood as possible. And this took way longer than normal because A, each tree only gives like 4 wood, which is terrible, and B, I don't know, maybe the constant spiders attacking me, making it hard to even chop down trees. Couldn't be that. Speaking of spiders though, on the way home, there were so many special ones out, and they were getting much stronger. The longer I live in this part of the world, the more powerful the special spiders' abilities also get. So there are more types of spiders that do more damage, there are more spiders, and now the special spiders that are enchanted have stronger levels of enchantments. Things are getting scary. Day 49. Today was a day that I crafted enough fence and fully finished fencing in my compound. Only thing was spiders were still spawning even inside of the boundary. I mean, just look at the spider cow twerk for your amusement. It's horrifying. After finishing the fence, I began planning how I would build out my house on the inside. Preferably in a way that didn't spawn more spiders inside of it, but at this point, I don't really know how to do that. If I could just get one safe place before things get worse, I will be so happy. So because things weren't working out, I tried testing out some stuff out in a creative world, and that's when I discovered that even though spiders could not only spawn on path blocks, but also slabs and other things they normally couldn't spawn on, for some reason they still couldn't spawn on transparent blocks like glass. So yes, after finally getting all of this area turned into path blocks, just like I did in my super flat world that stopped slimes from spawning, that was not going to cut it here. I now needed to replace all of the path with glass, which meant I was now going to need sand. And luckily, I was near a desert. I spent the rest of my day just collecting sand, which honestly, just like everything else in this world, it was a struggle because during the entire time, I was interrupted constantly. By the time the sun had left me, I was being jumped left and right by more powerful spider foes. There was even some real Dragon Ball Z power scaling going on here. While fighting, I killed this legendary spider who dropped the literal best enchantment in the game, Ender Mending 2. The even better version of Mending. At this point, the spiders were becoming too much though, and I had a pretty good amount of sand, so I decided to call it for the day and I ran back home while being chased vigorously the entire way home. By the time I got back at my base and was ready to go to sleep, I checked on my armor, and this stuff was trash. Look at the durability. My armor had taken quite the beating. On the next day, with all of my sand ready to go, I set up a small auto smelter with some hoppers and chests, so while beginning my base, the sand would smelt and be ready for when I needed it. Luckily, I had 4 buckets worth of lava that I had stored inside of my tanks in my backpack, back from when I was in the caves, that I used to kick off the furnaces and save me some coal. After setting up the furnaces, I sat around for a bit deciding what kind of house I wanted to build, and in no time, I knew exactly what I wanted to use. So just like the average Stardew Valley player, I yearned for the mines. I went back to my old tower and down to the mine area to collect all of the amethyst blocks, and then a ton of deep slate, because it is honestly such a gorgeous block to build with. Also for this part, I might just blur the footage in the background, because that one enchantment for my pickaxe that increases the speed the longer I mine, I began instant mining these blocks, and I was still in the forest area, so let's just say the footage is really laggy. After clearing up this area, I ran into a strange skeleton with a red bow and arrow on his side. I took this guy out, and he ended up dropping a hat that gives me like 100 luck. Unfortunately though, it would replace my helmet, which I desperately needed, so it's pretty much useless. After taking him down, I got a bit curious of where he actually came from, so I began exploring this nearby series of mine shafts, which led me to Loot Heaven. I ended up finding this weird dungeon thing that had like 0 mobs, and it was just full of chests that had lots of iron, lots of gold, there was golden apples everywhere, and even 2 more god apples inside the chests. Also, for some odd reason, there were a lot of bows with random enchantments. Like this bow had fire protection 3, and inside one of the chests, I found a regular mending book. Also, a little bit of a fun fact while looting all this, my game actually decided to not so casually crash twice, and I had to reloot this area both times. But anyways, at this point, I now had so much loot and a lot of what I came here for, so it was finally time to head back home to get building, because yes, I know, it is day 50 and I have no house, and I am very easily distracted. And speaking of being distracted and having a full inventory, I may have just continued exploring around because I cannot resist loot. And speaking of loot, not long into the next day, I found myself in this ginormous cave area with a couple of kinda sus looking chests that might just be mimics ready to drop me some more relics. And boy, were there a lot of mimics here. And I got so many relics. I found a pair of shoes that made me run like ridiculous speeds. I found some kitty slippers to scare away creepers, as if there were any in this world. I found a lucky scarf that increases my fortune for blocks I mine, which is cracked, may I add. And I found a vampiric glove that allowed me to steal health from any mobs I killed. This place was making me stacked. But also, not gonna lie, even though these mimics didn't have hands, they definitely had hands, if you know what I mean. Because just look at the damage they did to me. I still didn't even have any good source of food with any saturation, so it was hard to heal this, and it was kind of risky being down here. On day 54, I got back home and officially began building my house. For this, I had a general idea of the size and style I wanted, and what blocks I wanted to use. I started off by placing an outline of where the main house would actually be, and I spent the next few days adding different parts to it. I built a small area for a mine entrance, I added the front porch with some walls, and I added an upstairs area outside of the balcony because I can't have any of my builds looking super simple. Throughout this entire process, spiders continued to make my life harder and harder. And somehow, one even broke my old helmet when I wasn't recording, so I had to also make a new one. By the time I was a good portion finished with the main structure before adding details, it was now already day 57, and I was once again out of spruce wood. And getting wood was way more tedious in this world, including placing saplings at my base, because yes, I tried that, and it takes like 8 million bone meal in this mod pack. So at this point, I kind of figured my chances of finishing my house by day 60 were looking quite slim. And yes, I know it's my fault, because I procrastinate building to find the perfect location, but like, honestly, can you blame me? Just look at the view. On the next day, I sat out with my sonic speed boots back to the enchanting tower so I could set up a new and improved axe to gather as much wood as possible before things got worse. I crafted a new axe and I sat here enchanting books until I found something good, and after one Unbreaking 3 diamond axe and an efficiency 4 diamond axe with a telekinesis book later, I created this beast of an axe that I named the Exceptional Negotiator, because it was the perfect pun and it just came to me in the moment. But anyways, my brand new axe, I set out to the nearby forest of the frames, as I like to call it, because it was so freaking laggy every time I get here. You know what? I spent so much time fighting spiders just to get a blood moon later that night that forced me to run back home, and I netted myself a grand total of 1 stack of wood. Trees take so long to harvest, and I get like no wood, plus the spiders do not let me exist. So since I now couldn't sleep because of the blood moon, I guess I'll just keep working on the house in the dark, surrounded by even more aggressive spiders. After adding some walls, I needed even more iron for the iron bar glass that I've been using, and at this point, I was so tired of running back and forth that I placed down one of my waystones in the compound named Home, and I ran all the way over to the tower, through the spiders, grabbed my iron, and I rightfully named the second one Laggy Tower before teleporting home. Finally, I no longer had to deal with the waves of spiders each time I needed anything. Also, a little bit of a side note here, every time I teleport and I go to a new area, I get my frame rate back because it despawns all of the spiders in that area. But anyways, after returning home, I finished a couple of the windows as the sun began to rise, officially ending yet another blood moon night of hell. For the final day before the spiders mutate again, I found myself hard at work adding more to my base. I added this extra inside deck area that I could use to observe spiders. I finished the walls in the second floor area, including filling in their windows, and by the time the night had fallen upon me, I had added walls and these incredible hanging lanterns to the front balcony outside. I was nowhere near completing the house or my safe area, but I was definitely getting close. Before things got worse, I went to sleep for the night to see what horrors awaited me on the next day. As the sun began to rise, the spiders of this world mutated even further. Most of the regular spiders had become mutants by now, and there were even more strange new variants and species crawling all about. Things in this world were certainly getting interesting. So here I was, the morning of day 60. I looked outside my glass balcony and windows only to see so many new spiders. there was a spider chicken, a spider sheep, and what looked like an Enderman spider. After going outside in the distance, I saw a spider pig. It's like the Simpsons movie. Well, now that this world was even more dangerous, I really was in need of spider-proofing this area, and quickly. It's obvious the fences don't work because they just climb up it, so I was thinking about turning them into iron bars instead, but not before replacing all of the floors with glass to prevent spawns on the inside. But just as I went to grab the glass from my smelter, one of those ender spiders teleported to me and started attacking. And this dude was fast. Honestly, I didn't know these guys could teleport without, like a warning. Like typical Endermen, you have to look at them. These guys are like Endermen if they were always hostile. After that awful 3-star Yelp experience, I grabbed all of my remaining glass and I got to replacing all the path blocks with it, and quickly. And let me tell you, throughout this process, I was nonstop harassed by teleporting ender spiders, spider chickens, and even spider pigs. By the time I ran out of glass, it was already nighttime and the spiders were becoming more aggressive by the second. So, since I guess I needed more sand, I figured I'd sleep to make my life easier the next day. After sunup, I dumped out my gear in a chest and I cleared my backpack out before setting off into, I don't even know what I'm setting off into. Who knows what to expect out here at this point. This time, I brought my extra repair rings to fix my armor as I went, just in case. And even with those, boy was I not prepared. There was just way too much going on out here with insane spiders. This place was more dangerous than Deathclaw Canyon in Fallout. But finally, I did get to the desert again with my crazy fast boots, and I sat here super struggling to dig any sand while under constant fire from the local spiders. After getting about an inventory worth of sand, I grew tired of all the beatings I was taking, so I sped my way home through the minefield that this area had become. Upon reaching my compound, I wiped out the couple of spiders that had caught up with me and dumped all of the sand into the smelters to continue making glass. And now that I was stuck waiting, I had an idea. Inside one of the chests, I remembered getting an enchanted book called Smelter that instantly smelts any blocks you mine with it. And I was thinking, maybe I could just use this enchantment on a shovel to get more glass. Because to be honest, I did not want to keep building around my base with all the spider interruptions because they were driving me crazy. So I used a waystone to teleport back to the Tower of Lag, where I finally found my book along with a Fortune 3 book for the pickaxe and an improved version of Bane of Arthropods that I wanted to add to my God Spider sword just to see if it could get stronger than my other one. With all 16 frames that I got here, I enchanted my sword again before adding the enchantment just to see what I could get, and I ended up with an enchantment called Perpetual Strike 3, which increases damage to a target for the more hits you hit it with. Which was honestly, it was good enough because maybe boss spiders could use it, and I also didn't have many more levels, so I couldn't really afford to keep rolling for more enchantments. So I gave it the new Bane of Arthropods, and hopefully this thing will now outperform my good old uranium sword. After this, I added Fortune to my pickaxe and named it Fortune 500, and I gave my shovel Smelter. Before going, I checked my helmet, and I could get Protection 4 if I was level 30. Unfortunately though, at this point, I had spent a lot of my XP, and after going downstairs, my game's FPS went down to like 1. Again, I'd like to warn you, if you are going to play this mod pack with the spiders and shaders, be very careful. Even with the best of PCs, they will come to get you. Your frame rate will dip. Anyways, I opened my front door and I struggled to even walk, just in case I had a golden apple out. But as soon as I was a little less laggy and able to kind of keep going, that's when I learned the real dangers of outside. A legendary magnetic spider was all it took to trap me in this highly dangerous horde of spiders, and I could not get away. Even with the Web Calamity's abilities, I was stuck, and they were melting my helmet fast. I was forced to eat an apple just to stay alive, and finally, I had made my way out of whatever you want to call that. After getting home, just look at my helmet. Look what they did to my helmet. I desperately need to get mending on my gear because wow, I was honestly shaking from that. My hands were shaky. It was literally like PvPing on 2B2T, the oldest anarchy server in Minecraft. I'm sorry, I had to. Where your armor breaks before you do. After that incident, if I want to call it that, was over, I went to check on my glass, and it turns out half my furnaces had ran out of fuel. So I was also just wasting time. Nice. I went back to my tower to check for more fuel, and I was entirely out of coal and lava. so I could use my new fortune pick to mine some coal and inevitably get distracted by tons more loot. But instead, since I'm in a rush, I opted to go back to that hell of a desert to test out my new shovel enchantment. Before leaving, I tested it out on a piece of sand just to make sure, and it's beautiful. It created glass. Now knowing that the enchantment worked, I ran full speed to the desert, my game crashed, and after loading back in, it was sand time. And not only did this work perfectly, it also gave me the XP for smelting. So within no time, I now had tons more glass, and I was even closer to my helmet breaking because those repair rings only fix one thing at a time, but I was also closer to getting level 30, so that way I could get protection 4 for the helmet. So I decided while I was out here, I'd spend the night fighting for some more XP. I put my shovel in my backpack in hopes of my armor actually catching up on repairs, and I went to battle. And everything was going perfectly fine until I ran into this legendary special spider that absolutely ambushed me into yet another massive pile of spiders who decided to crash my game again. Bad enough I didn't have my helmet on, so it didn't break, so I had less armor, but now my game was also crashing. Things were definitely ramping up, and I was a lot less safe anywhere in this world. On the next day, after getting through that, I found myself back at the compound finishing up my kind of ugly glass floor that was already making such a difference with spider spawns. After filling in the primary area, I decided I'd stop back at my tower to collect some seeds to finally start up a farming area so I could get more animals, and while here with the XP that I had gotten from the night before, I gave my helmet protection 4. At this point, it was already nighttime and I needed more wheat seeds, so I ran home the long way while struggling to punch grass in between all of the spider drama. Halfway through, they knocked me into a cave with some conveniently exposed coal veins that you know I took before heading back home, and I was honestly done for the night. Can't really do much outside of my compound, so I kind of just went to sleep. Now that I have my supplies for the farm, I crafted some iron bars and began turning this place into more of a prison than a home. And I get absolutely no break with these spiders. They are literally so non-stop that even having 5 repair rings on me, my armor and tools cannot keep up with the constant beatings. After swapping out the wall, I laid out this decent-sized square area for a little wheat farm over in the corner before adding a 4th layer of iron bars with a layer of wall on top. The idea was maybe the spiders that decided to climb up would get stuck on the little lip area at the top, stopping them in their tracks. After running out of blocks for more wall, I planted all of the seeds I had in the square, and I used some bone meal to harvest a bunch before fully filling in the farm. To top it off, I added a small decorative brazier in the center over top the water source for some extra lighting and decoration. And immediately after finishing the farm, I was jumped in my own house by a legendary spider with so many abilities that I could barely hit him. This dude was like all for one from My Hero Academia. He had a shielding ability that required me to crit him for damage, which meant I had to jump, and his other powers stopped me from doing that, so I literally could not hit him. This guy was like a top 10 anime villain. After finally taking him out for dinner, he dropped a bunch of garbage enchantments, and wow, I kind of realized that I really needed to make this place even more safe. Even though I keep saying that, and I keep saying we're getting there, spiders keep jumping me, so it feels like I'm just never going to be safe in this world. So anyways, back to the farms I went. After the sun came back up, I planted this small little farm melon area, and I originally wanted to do more, but I began worrying about the middle area on top of the melons being a spawning area for spiders. So as a kind of solution, I iron barred in the entire place. I added some doors to the front, and I made framed glass for the edges of the door and the roof, so that way it was also like another little prison. Even though this place kind of looked like a prison, it was also giving me a nice little greenhouse vibe. Maybe like a medieval greenhouse area inside of I don't know, like Hogwarts or something. While waiting for the melons to grow so I could add more to the farm, it was time to also make myself a small carrot farm so I can get some golden carrots and maybe breed some pigs. But first, I had the perfect idea for a small sugarcane farm right by my window just in case I needed more paper or sugar in the future. And after placing them all, what do you know? The great melon had spawned. I harvested the few melons before they kept just respawning, and I filled in the entire farm area greenhouse with fully grown melon plants. Not gonna lie, I don't really need melon for much, I just kind of wanted to do it to make it look nicer. After this, I quickly added in a small area for the carrots, and I replaced the rest of the path blocks in between the grass to fully spider-proof the area. At this point, it was nighttime, and I kind of needed more resources to work on my house, including a lot more iron to make enough iron bars to fully replace all my fencing. Overall though, even with the weird glass floors, I was pretty happy with how this place is looking. My base was looking pretty cool. At this point, it was now the next day, day 67, and I was ready to go mining. I dumped my entire inventory, and I mean my entire inventory, into some chests before being jumped by even more spiders. After taking care of the trash, I teleported back to my tower, and I went straight down into the mines to begin one of my favorite parts of Minecraft. I mean, obviously. Plus, now that I had Fortune 3, I was going to score unreasonable amounts of loot. And that I did, because within no time, I had already found myself with a full inventory that netted me a total of 57 blocks of coal, along with tons of other resources. And yet, I was only just getting started. Shortly after cleaning my inventory again, I ran into this small dungeon structure that I wanted to explore. I broke into the ceiling where I was greeted by a whole pile of those weird-looking skeleton dudes just hanging inside with some Gucci bows. And for some reason, at this point, my game's frame rate just died. I pushed through, beating up these nerds one at a time until the coast was clear, and now all of their stuff was now my stuff. Overall, the chests didn't really have much in them, just a bunch of like gunpowder, a couple of golden apples, but I did find a Fortune Plus book that I could use to increase Fortune 3 to Fortune 4 on my pickaxe. And of course, because I was already down here mining lots of iron using Fortune, I wanted to do that right now. So in the middle of this dungeon, I created a furnace, and I began smelting some iron for an anvil so I could add the book to it immediately. While waiting, I broke through the nearby wall to maybe find why I was lagging, or at least find some more stuff to mine while I waited, and this was when I found a heart of diamond, which I had zero clue what to do with. After digging around my inventory, I found out that the only thing this was useful for was an item called a pickarang that, based on the name, I'm guessing is like some kind of like long-range pickaxe that you throw like a boomerang. I don't know, sounds pretty cool. Like you could maybe mine ores in the distance, but honestly, knowing me, I will probably never use it. After AFKing around for a bit while my stuff was mining, I had enough iron ingots to make an anvil, and I turned my pickaxe into a Fortune 4. And it only costed me all 30 of my levels that I wanted for my armor. Anyways, now that I had Fortune 4, I had found this massive lava cave area, and I was in heaven, mining so many resources for the next couple of days. By the time it was day 72, both my backpack and inventory was full of resources, including stacks upon stacks of iron, and while fighting mimics, I got a heart relic that literally put me up to 2 rows of health. This trip was an insane success. With my inventory stacked upon stacked, I dug my way up to the surface to make my way home, and on the way I was jumped by yet another army of spiders. At this point, even with my super fast boots, it was becoming difficult to run through spiders without getting smacked a couple of times and getting caught within a pile of them. It was literally becoming unlivable outside of the walls of my base. But after a night of running, I was finally safe. I was back at my compound where I crafted some blast furnaces and began mass smelting and organizing my iron and other loot that I had gotten. And honestly, just look at this haul. It is so pretty. After turning all of the iron back to ore, I had gotten 30 stacks of this stuff. That's right, I had a Fortune 4 pickaxe plus the item that gave me increased fortune. I printed resources. Not to mention, just look at all the gold, all the coal, and honestly just everything else that I'd come back with. I was pretty much now set for life. After organizing, I chucked all of the iron into my 3 blast furnace auto smelters with a stack of coal each before crafting several stacks of iron bars. And you guessed it, I spent the next 30 or so minutes building this wall all around my base. I built the wall 4 high like the rest, and I added the regular wall trim around the very top to both make it look nice and hopefully block off some more spiders. And now, this place made me feel just like home. That is, if I was a criminal and this was prison. Which, I mean, if you listen to what my villagers say, I might actually be one. But anyways, my wall was almost completed, and I now needed some kind of front gate that was easy to use and, more importantly, safe. So I used more iron frames around the edges to make sure there was no gap in between the bars for spiders to crawl through, and after a little bit of experimenting, I kind of just gave up and imitated the door that I did for my greenhouse, because anything fancier would honestly just let more spiders in, even though they could technically climb over anyways. I mean, I don't think there's any safe way to do this at this point without fully boxing myself in and having no access to the sky. So now that the wall was finally done, I had a couple of spots where spiders were spawning to clean up on the inside, specifically the balcony of my house. They kept spawning up there and climbing down, which was getting pretty annoying at this point. I was looking around for possible solutions that didn't make my house look more ugly, since they can still spawn on slabs and I couldn't really build anything else. And that's when I found you could make carpets made out of leaves. Leaves are also transparent blocks, and they might even look good up there. So my decision was made. I crafted 2 sets of shears and I went to sleep for the night so I could go get leaves tomorrow. After the sun was back, I teleported to my tower of lag that I still needed to take all of my stuff from, and I went to the nearby forest to begin gathering leaves. While doing this, I was, of course, interrupted. I mean, it's almost a given at this point, but after getting about 2 stacks, I was ready to leave. But not first before the obligatory anime convention of mobs jumping me and literally melting through my armor's durability. After escaping that ridiculousness and teleporting back home, I went to craft the leaf carpets only to be distracted by these amazing hedges. Honestly, I love mods that make decorating in Minecraft feel a lot more like Animal Crossing, if that makes sense. Plus, I always use leaves in my builds anyways, so why not? I made them and I put them in front of my house. And after that, I made the carpets and I coated the entire balcony in them. And I mean, they didn't look that, like, bad. I think it would have looked nicer if there was, like, a couple here and there, so that way they would look like piles of leaves, almost as if they'd, like, fallen off a tree. But, I mean, then the spiders would kind of keep spawning. So now, instead, it looked almost like those cheesy fake grass carpets that they put on porches in, like, trailer park homes. I didn't hate it, but, like, it kind of is what it is, you know what I mean? So after touching up my base, I was debating on what to do next. I wanted to finish building and start adding things to my house, but my armor was really taking a beating. Even with my rings of repair, my helmet was almost broken. So first, I grabbed my pile of rubies and I went back to the tower to craft more helmets and test out what enchantments I could get for them. After only a few tries, I ended up getting Protection 4 Unbreaking 3, which was exactly what I wanted, but even better. I was trying to get some other enchantments for it, but after going under level 30, I was pretty good at what I got. Plus now I could swap the helmets whenever I needed, so one could be in my inventory and heal first. Throughout the night while I was thinking about enchantments, I sifted them all throughout the chests around my camp, looking for cool or interesting ones that I could also add to my armor and gear, until my inventory looked like this. I went back to the tower and started off by adding Protection 3 to my leggings, and after that I began experimenting with sword enchants. I found this Spartan weapon enchant that increases damage if I have a shield equipped. And unfortunately, it apparently cannot go on the webbed calamity, so instead I added it to my uranium sword instead and went outside to test this bad boy out just to see how it performs. And this sword was now hitting over 40 damage. I could now one-shot long leg spiders and ender spiders. So besides its AoE effect, the web calamity was kind of out of its league. I went back to the tower and began putting together enchantments for my chest piece that would give me absorption when getting negative effects. They would increase my XP gains, and I would have Vitae for extra health. Except with all of this enchanting, I was now down to 4 levels, which meant it was spider revenge time. After getting back up to level 20, I added the final enchantment for my chest to the book with the others on it, and in order to add this to my chest, it was going to cost even more XP. Except there was one problem. My shield was just about broken because for some reason, my repair rings don't affect my offhand weapons. So if I were going to go back outside, I would lose tons of defense for taking the shield off and the brand new damage buff for my sword. So for now instead, I went back home to AFK with my shield in my inventory instead of my offhand, while waiting for it to repair throughout the night. After waiting a bit, I realized just how long this is going to take, and since, you know, I was now rich and powerful, I thought, why not build a bunch more rings? So I gathered everything I needed, and I crafted 5 more rings, totaling me at 10 rings of repair. To be honest, I would have made even more, but at this point, I was down to 5 emeralds because there were no villagers anywhere, and you needed at least 1 emerald per ring. Honestly, can't really complain. So after waiting all night, my shield was now half healed and I was ready to go. I began slicing and dicing spiders all the way until I hit level 23. With all 23 levels, I finished enchanting my chest piece, which hopefully should increase my XP gains in the future. And to test that out, I went back to the field near my compound to get some more revenge Captain Sparkle style. I went out there slaughtering spiders all day, and honestly, I didn't really notice that much of an XP gain. I took out like a lot of enchanted guys, and by the time the night had fallen, I ran back into that castle with my poor horse that had been stuck there forever. With him on my mind, I set off back home because tomorrow, I was finally going to bring him to my house. I went back to my tower and grabbed the diamond horse armor and a saddle, and I had a book with horse protection 4 ready. But before leaving, I checked what kind of enchantments I could get at the enchantment table, and this thing could get swiftness 4. My horse could be uber fast, even though I probably will never take him out of the compound anyways, but you know what? A horse boy can dream. The next morning I set out, and what I ran into was probably the most dangerous group of spiders I have seen in this world yet. I mean, just look at this insane army of different powered spiders knocking me around. If I didn't have strong armor, this probably would have been the end of it, because there was no way in hell I could escape all of this. But finally, after clearing out enough of the spiders, I made my way to the precious new friend, the skeleton horse. After jumping on him, I realized he couldn't even wear horse armor, so honestly, it's a good thing I did not waste that XP in advance. Anyways, our new horse friend had been acquired, and I spent a lot of this day leading him back to our base, surprisingly without getting a single hit from any spider. After getting back to the compound, I put him in with the Forever Alone sheep so they could be friends while he was inside of an actual area, so he couldn't escape. With our new friend finally home, I figured it was time to give him a name, especially since he will remain dripless until the end of time because he cannot wear armor. So I grabbed a name tag and I named him Seto Kaiba because he had this intense, quirky villain energy. I don't know why I named him that. Let me know in the comments if you know what franchise he's from. After the huge spider incident was over and I got the horse back, I was already up to level 27 now. So I went back to the tower where I added Enlightenment 2 to my helmet as well to increase my XP gains. I added Looting 3 to my sword for almost zero reason, I guess. And lastly, I added my only regular mending book to my shield because realistically there was no way I could keep up with repairing it, even with the rings. Now that my enchantments were all kind of sorted for now, it was time to get back to collecting wood from the forest so I could finally finish the top of my house before day 90 rears its ugly head. I spent the whole night out here struggling with spiders while collecting wood the slowest possible way, plus my game even crashed, so I had to go and harvest a lot of the trees again. And yeah, things were not going that well. By the time the sun was up, I really hadn't gotten that much wood yet, but one of the enchanted spiders dropped this insane sounding book, Immortality. This thing said that it would allow me to cheat death upon a fatal hit. I wonder if it was more like a totem of undying, where I could take a single hit and then just have like no health left, or if I just took a fatal hit and then just got all my health back. Honestly, this enchantment sounded way good to be true, and I was wondering what the catch was going to be. I continued on dealing with spiders and chopping down more trees until I had found myself all the way through the forest near that one building I wanted to explore next to spawn. By the time I was done, it felt like I had gotten a ton of wood, but after getting home and checking my inventory, it turned out I had only gotten just over 4 stacks. I guess when it becomes this difficult to harvest wood, time just ends up flying and you really don't accomplish that much. Anyways, during that trip, I guess since just leaving my base is so intense, I came back with 23 more levels. My shield was almost fully mended, and I had a bunch of new enchantments, including another ender mending. I went back to the tower to try adding the new ender mending book to my helmet because it always takes the hardest beating, and that's when I realized ender mending can actually only be put on tools and elytras. I contemplated adding it to my main sword, but honestly, with the repair rings, it kind of wasn't worth using the XP at this point. So the next day, I climbed up to the top of my base with the spruce wood from my trip ready to build a nice roof. That is until realizing a roof using stairs would be a literal spawning ground for more spiders. So instead, I was going to need to make it flat using deep slate, which I needed more of. So I grabbed some books, went over to the Tower of Lag, and I added this momentum enchantment to my pick to heavily speed things up, and while I was at it, I also gave this pufferfish enchantment to my sword to give mobs debuffs, and I went down into the mines, eager to do what I needed to get more resources. After getting down to the bottom of the ladder of my mines, I went to break one block to dig deeper, and my game crashed. So, since my game crashed, I reloaded, did the same exact thing, and it crashed again. And this is when I learned that apparently the momentum enchantment, along with the Gotta Mine Fast enchantment, do not get along. So I would highly recommend not using them together. Anywho, after loading a backup save to fix the issue, I went back down to the cave, this time without enchanting anything, and I began digging down only to be greeted by an ender spider guarding exactly what I needed not that far away. After defeating said spider, I collected tons of resources until my pick eventually started breaking everything lightning fast from the Gotta Mine Fast mod. And you know what? It kind of makes sense why the two mods don't get along with each other and would cause an insta-crash. After harvesting a ton of the deep slate, I also cleaned up all of my iron ores, which netted me a solid 3 stacks before going back home. After getting home, I crafted my superior deep slate bricks, and I started laying out the perimeter of my makeshift roof. That is, until I was interrupted by being yeeted into oblivion by this enchanted spider. After my little interruption, I finished placing out the edge, and I began filling in the middle with spruce wood while leaving a small spot for the upstairs ladder so I can get up top. After finishing the floor, I used slabs around the edges for a bit of an overhang, and I added some walls on top of them. After climbing down to look at it, it definitely doesn't look as good as if I would have used like a traditional roof. But honestly, after adding some more hanging lanterns, it could look pretty great, you know? Now that the roof was partially on, it was time for detailing. I started off by adding a ladder from my second floor in the house to the very top roof, and I created a second ladder from the ground floor up to the second one, which was honestly kind of useless and only for looks, but that doesn't matter. After that, I scrounged through my chest to find the only real Minecraft torches I had to make more lanterns to begin lighting up the area. I added them to different areas on the bottom floor, added a bunch to the second floor, and I put some somewhat out of place ones on the top balcony that was still kind of sitting weird with me, but as Courage the Cowardly Dog always says, the things I do for love. I spent the rest of this day adding more finishing touches to the house. At this point, the only weak spot left was my little glass room hanging over the edge of the compound. So I added a perimeter of slabs around the edges after I crafted a stack and a half of framed glass using iron to fill in the roof. This way I could use it as a kind of safe vantage point area and nothing will spawn on top of it. After finishing up the roof, I added more lanterns inside, added a trapdoor to the ladder to the third floor, and now all I needed was more leaves to make said third floor platform a lot safer, and I was finally ready to start moving my stuff into the house, assuming that I actually do that. So after the sun came back up, I was back at the lag tower and out and about collecting more leaves to fill in the roof floor. I grabbed about 4 stacks before breaking my shears and heading back home to continue working. I crafted a few more gorgeous shrubs to put out front of my base, and then I filled in the entire top floor with leaf carpets, followed by my second main floor, and now my base was both super cozy and, more importantly, super safe, because I could already feel the lack of spiders coming at me from the top of my house. To celebrate my house finally becoming whole, I harvested my crops that were ready with my Fortune 4 pickaxe, and this thing was kinda nutty. This little carrot farm produced 3.5 stacks from a single harvest. After replanting them, I also gathered all of my wheat from the wheat farm, and for some odd reason, the Fortune seemed to only work on the seeds, because I got like 5 stacks. Delicious. Anyways, after finishing off being a farmer for the night, I noticed even more spiders on top of my house. I climbed up to the roof, and even more had spawned. So at this point, honestly, I don't really know what to do to stop the spawns. I guess the leaf carpets also didn't work, or maybe they were spawning on top of the walls. I could replace the floors with glass, but that would end up looking kind of awful. And while looking around my base, I also kind of needed more sources of light, but being out of regular torches and not being able to craft more for lanterns, this place, I guess, was just kind of stuck dark when the sun goes down. Unless I fill in the area under the glass with lava, but I'm also kind of scared of it, you know, burning down my house. So for tonight, instead of dealing with all these problems, I'm just gonna sleep. The next morning, I figured it was finally time to clear out my laggy tower for good. I could add my enchanting setup to my house, and I could use the waystone as a way to explore more of the world instead of using it to teleport back and forth from my crappy tower. I especially needed to do this because day 90 is going to make everything even worse. That is, if it can get much worse. Originally, I was going to spend my time taking everything from the tower, until I realized just how much clutter it really was and how many trips that was going to take. So instead, I just filled my inventory with anything that I found still valuable. I mined all of the bookshelves, which gave me all 3 books for some odd reason. I took the enchantment table and the waystone, and just like that, I was out of here, hopefully never to come back again. I made my way through the field of spiders one last time, and honestly, exploring anything at this point was going to be rough, because these guys were brutal. After arriving home, I built a nice enchantment area in the corner, and I added a ton of barrels as a makeshift storage area next to it. I wasn't really planning on organizing much here though, because of all the spiders around, you really don't know what to expect, and I take forever to organize. The only part I did organize was these few chests next to the enchanting area that were pretty much just my rare material chests, including things like diamonds, iron, etc. You kind of get it. For the rest of the night and throughout the next day, I continued cleaning up the dump chest around my base, organizing all my rare resources into those chests, and adding more furnishing to the bottom floor of my base. While doing all this, I came to the conclusion that I just cannot be safe in this world. Spiders continued to spawn on the stairs inside of my house, they spawned on the roof, they spawned in the melon farm. I mean, just look at them all camping in the middle of my roof. I can't even feel safe in my own house. I woke up on day 86, just 4 mere days away from the next mutation, and the atmosphere of my house had completely changed. It started to feel cozy, and it had all of the resources I needed to survive. I started off today by preparing for my journey far away from my home. I crafted all of my carrots into golden carrots for more efficient combat food, and I dumped and prepared both my inventory and my backpack with the necessities and space for more loot. Just in case, I also packed rubies for an emergency armor repair and iron to make anvils with for said repairs, and just like that, I was now ready to set out on the journey further than I had ever gone before day 90 gets worse. Before setting out, I made some fence gates, and I fenced in the area in front of my house that was originally meant to be a mining area. I grabbed my best boy Seto Kaiba, and I turned it into his brand new crib. Just look at this guy, he's glowing inside of his new home. With my horse now more comfortable, I double checked from my waystone in my backpack, and I set off on what might be my final journey. Real quick before leaving, I remembered I still had an Unbreaking 2 book, so I used one of the anvils and I added it to my chest piece just for some extra defense against all of the emotional and physical damage these spiders were going to throw at me. Now that I was ready, I set off in the direction towards the horse castle from before, and there were still plenty of spiders camping outside waiting for me. After getting by a lot of them, I veered to the right, away from another abandoned city, where I found yet another serpent statue next to some cozy looking cabin. As the sun started to set, I absolutely struggled to get to the top of this thing for whatever loot was inside the chest. That only ended up being 2 gold. Since the spiders were more hostile at night, and it was now harder to see where I was going, I decided to explore the nice little cabin nearby before taking refuge in it for the night. Luckily, there were pretty much no spiders here, and inside one of the chests had 8 obsidian, which would be almost perfect for a nether portal if they existed in this world. The next morning, I left the cozy little house, only to be immediately jumped by a pile of spiders in the nearby desert. All it takes is one enchanted boy, and it could all be over. It's like AMC's The Crawling Dead out here. Get it? It was a bad joke, I'm sorry. Anyways, after escaping that fun situation and that bad joke, I noticed this interesting structure in the distance with a wandering trader inside. And after getting closer, it got even better. There was a nearby horse stable with a horse inside of it. For now, I ran past the horse to check out the structure, and it was pretty cool looking, but it didn't really have that much loot. That is, until I saw it in the middle. This place had a sand waystone. After clearing out the current wave of spiders that was emerging from who knows where, I was thinking about ways to get the horse home since I didn't really have any saddles on me. And then it hit me. I could use the waystone to temporarily teleport back home, get a saddle, and maybe the horse could teleport too if I was on top of it while teleporting. I went back to my base to find a saddle, but after turning up every chest in the place, it turns out the only one I actually had was on Seto Kaiba. So for now, I borrowed it from him and went back to befriend my new horse pal. After becoming his friend, I gave him the saddle and some Gucci diamond horse armor, and I tried teleporting home with him with 0 luck. It turns out you cannot teleport while riding on mobs. So unfortunately, it was time for plan B. I rode the horse, the 1,000 or so blocks I had traveled all the way back home, and surprisingly with no issues. Whenever I'm on top of a horse, The spiders just don't care. So anyways, after getting him home, I put him in the horse stable with his good friend Seto Kaiba, and I used my waystone to teleport back to continue my journey. But not of course before stealing all of the lanterns around this building so I could use them to add to my compound. Just as I was about to leave, I accidentally fell in a hole near the horse stable where I found some wool buried underground. Thinking it was kinda sus, I broke inside only to find a hidden chest room. There wasn't really a ton inside, but I did take the lantern before leaving. I continued on my journey, finally leaving that spider-filled desert when I honestly don't know what happened here. I killed the spider and everything was fine until my screen started bugging out like crazy and all of the hearts of my health went invisible and my character was like stuck slanted. I have no clue what happened here, but it freaked me out because I had not backed up my world in who knows how long. I tried restarting my game and I tried teleporting using the waystones, but nothing was working. None of the spiders here were attacking me, but the XP still tracked me and I couldn't pick up any items. It was like I became a ghost even though I didn't die. I tried fixing this for like 10 minutes straight until I unfortunately just had to load a backup save. Luckily, I backed my game up very frequently, so I didn't lose as much as I had thought I was going to. Honestly, ever since I lost my OG hardcore world, I have been backing up worlds like consistently because I am terrified of losing data now. So anyways, after the backup, I had restarted back in the cottage that I had looted the day before. And upon arriving at the trader building this time, the horse stable was gone. My horse didn't spawn. I lost the horse, the only horse in this world that was not a zombie horse or skeleton horse, to some stupid garbage glitch. So after re-stealing all of the lanterns, I just kept going back to where the glitch happened, and maybe I could find another horse along the way. And that's when I saw this in the distance. There was a village. I thought there would be no chance of finding a village in this spider-infested world, and I was so excited to see this in the distance. But wait, guess what happened? Yep, if you guessed that the glitch randomly happened again, in the same exact area, you would be right. I had no clue what was going on. At this point, it was now my third time taking on this area because I loaded my backup again. This time I grabbed the sand waystone and I just dipped. I didn't feel like breaking all the lanterns again because who knows if I was going to just randomly glitch out again. For some reason though, now that there were spiders everywhere and my game was acting like a slideshow. It was so laggy. I ran back to the village, but I could not get a single break from the spiders. So I stole a second waystone from the village and I just kept running. I ran past a few more structures, but my game was not having it at all. I finally ended up near another abandoned city, which was the last thing on this spider-infested earth that I wanted to deal with right now. So I turned to the right and just kept running, and honestly, I think it was too late to journey like this in this world because I did not see a possibility of me getting a break in spiders for even a second. I spent the rest of this day non-stop, high adrenaline, being chased by spiders, constantly being attacked, just running and running. I kept hitting ocean areas, and I was getting ambushed left and right until finally I just gave up and I started heading home. But I didn't want to sacrifice a waystone, so instead of teleporting home, I just ran home the hard way. And I was feeling very defeated and very horseless. While running home all night, the spiders began feeling different. They were getting more violent, which I feel like I say every day, but today they were especially extra violent. At this point, every time I stepped foot on land, I was being attacked by incredibly brutal spiders. I could not catch a single second for a break. And that's when I realized it was already happening. The day 90 mutation had begun. It was now day 90 and things around the world were too far gone. The spider mutations had gotten so strong that the odds for survival were slim to none. At this point, there were hardly any regular spiders left. They've all transformed into something worse. And do you remember that spider that I had encountered at the bottom of that mob dungeon early on in the gameplay? Those things were now spawning everywhere. After getting home and clearing my inventory, I didn't quite know what to do. The world was even less safe than before. Just while looking outside my house window, I saw 6 of those spider beast bosses. If I didn't act now, my house was probably going to be overrun. I stepped outside because I had an idea of how to make things safer, and upon looking back at my house, I was greeted by 2 of the spider beasts up top. So I was going back inside. I found this spot in the corner of my base to make a new mine shaft so I could go down and collect lava. I crafted a ton of buckets and I began building down, but not too long into it, I ran into a small cave where I was ambushed by luckily some easy baby spiders. After pretending to be Aaron Yeager, I kept digging down until I struck another cave. After building down into the cave, I began exploring very carefully just in case there were any of those big beast spiders down here. However, instead, I was greeted by something a lot more friendly. I found this huge network of dilapidated mine shafts that were full of ores and other things to be looted. However, I was not here for the tons of iron and other ores, at least not today. After a little bit of running through these mine shafts, I had located my target, lava, and I began filling every nook and cranny of my inventory and my backpack with the spicy water goodness that was. After filling everything up, I left a waypoint here so I could find my way back, and after getting back to the bottom of my ladder, it had turned out to be surrounded by way more lava. So I left a second marker to make it easier for me to get more lava in the future, and I went back to the surface to begin Operation Lava Trench. If I couldn't stop the spiders from crawling over my base, I could make a bit of lava around my base that would stop them from getting even the chance to climb over my base. After getting back to the top, I went outside to see if I could start adding lava, but everywhere I looked, I was being camped by more of those spider beasts. So for extra safety, I tried to sleep, at least to slow down some of the quicker spiders at night while I tried to tackle this project, but I also couldn't do that because even more spider beasts were camping underneath the glass area of my house. Things were getting scary. After waiting until dawn, I was ready to go back outside. And those spiders on my roof were still waiting for my juicy gamer cheeks. And until they're gone, I can't really do much, so it was time to face my fears Kingdom Hearts 3 style. I climbed up my outside ladder, and luckily the first beast spider, being the microbrain that he was, got stuck under the slabs around the top of my house, and he was an easy clap. After crushing my first disappointing foe, I easily destroyed the next two. Surprisingly, it turns out I was now so strong and powerful, just like in real life, don't quote that I easily ruined their KDs. With them gone, I decided to just go up to the roof and place glass blocks every few blocks to stop any more potential spawns, and my game crashed again. So after clearing them out again, I finished placing out all of the glass, so hopefully they just stop spawning up here, because honestly, I'm so tired of dealing with it. While at it, I also added some more random glass to the areas on my second inside floor to hopefully stop any more spawns in there too. As sad as it is to say, doing this took like half of the day. But now that my roof would stop hopefully raining spiders on me, I began scoping out the area to start building my lava pit. I opened my front gate only to be immediately jumped by several more boss spiders, and even with my defense, they still hit hella hard, and they stick around for so long because of all their stupid health. After clearing the nearby aggressors and seeing their drops, it gave me a new idea. I could brew potions to make my time outside of the walls a lot safer, or hopefully just more efficient. I began looking through potions and favoriting which ones I wanted to try and brew, and I spent a lot of time researching these potions, and I even found this insane one called Potion of Bug Pheromones. And this thing made all bugs, including spiders, neutral to me, which in a world full of spiders sounds pretty useful. And then I learned that it needed tons of crazy mob drops from things like cockroaches and whatever drop bears are, which are all things that are pretty much extinct in this world. So instead, I was stuck brewing basic Minecraft boy potions like regeneration and strength. I placed down 2 brewing stands and got straight to brewing potions. I made a handful of glass bottles and filled them up with the nearby water, and while outside, there were more spiders assaulting me from my roof. And at least there was, less of them, but I guess I just can't win at this point. So I spent the rest of this day experimenting with potions, but mostly unsuccessfully. I didn't have any gas tiers for regen potions, and the only other thing I could actually make that might work would be potions of invisibility, but with there being so many spiders outside, there was zero chance I was risking everything in this world by walking out there with no armor on, because those spiders are ruthless and unforgiving. So all I came out of this little brewing spree with was potions of strength 2. After the sun was back up, I filled my inventory with lava and I was ready to start burning things. The second I walked outside of my house, there were still a few spiders on my roof, but I also had some new visitors. I had this roaming band of pillagers. I ran outside while there was a surprising break in the spiders, and I took each and every one of these guys to a 5-star dinner with Gordon Ramsay himself serving us. Honestly, my base was getting kind of lonely though, so I kind of wish I had lured some of them inside so I could put them inside of boats and break their bows and make new friends, because that is exactly how making friends works. At least you can tell that to the people in my basement. Anyways, with them gone, I decided since this part of the ground around my base was so whack that I was just gonna pour lava everywhere down the side of it and be done with it. And that is exactly what I did. I used most of the lava that I had, but it was now a lot safer to say that no spiders were going to get into this part of my base. And honestly, since the nearby ground would take forever to break to make a proper lava pit, I was thinking I might just do the same thing around the other sides. I mean, it's not like this place looked that nice in the first place. So that's exactly what I tried to do before one specific spider kept crashing my game. I had to lower my render distance all the way down to almost 1 so he wouldn't load in, and since I no longer had my tower waypoint, I tried to run back over to the castle where I found my horse instead. And yeah, I'll just let you see what actually happened here. The spiders were now unstoppable. When I got caught in that horde, there was virtually no way out. The boss spiders had too much health to quickly kill, and in that tiny amount of time, my armor was melted down almost 1/4 of the way in durability. By the time I got back home, I managed to lose a lot of the spiders, but these 4 boss boys would not leave me alone, and I couldn't bait them into the lava either. I managed to get rid of one of them, but the others just kind of left, almost like any father figures in my life. Also, I'm sorry, but I love these jokes way too much to not say them all the time. But yeah, I didn't really accomplish much today because the spiders would not let me. They just would not let up, and I needed to make sure whatever was crashing my game was actually finally gone. So yeah, it was now day 94, and I am actually just speechless. Just what happened? Just look at all these spiders. During this encounter, I could not move at all. They were melting my armor within seconds. I desperately struggled to place down my waystone, and I teleported back home. It was official. I can now no longer leave my home. My helmet was half broke, and just look at my shield. It was seconds away from breaking, which could have taken away like half of my sword's damage and a lot of my defense, including my poison immunity. At this point, the spiders had died off, at least that's what I had hoped. So I unequipped my shield to repair it because mending was apparently now too slow, and I went back outside to continue placing more lava. Surprisingly, I actually managed to get most of my inventory of lava out, and I went back inside to figure out what I was going to do with my almost broken shield. Since mending just won't cut it anymore and all the spider damage outproduces it anyways, I guess I was just gonna waste diamonds and XP to repair it, which is, you know, super lame, especially since I have mending. But the second I walked into my house to think about this, I was ambushed again by even more spiders. I cleaned up what was running around and afterwards spent some quality time with my new cushion prisoners. After clearing out my house like I was in some stereotypical zombie show, I wasted my resources fixing my shield. After that, I went back down into the mines to get myself some more lava. While down here, I may have gotten a bit lost though, even though I had waypoints in place, but eventually I did find a new source of lava, and this one came with diamonds. I mined out this juicy 8 vein, and these guys dropped me 23 diamonds. My fortune was absolutely cracked. After hiding those diamonds in my backpack, it was time to collect myself some more spicy water. After filling up, I figured since I'm probably not traveling anymore, why not just place a waystone down here for some more easy access. And after getting home, I found another new friend on my couch. The next day, with my copious amounts of lava, I finished off the rest of the lava moat thing outside, if you could even call it that, and my house was now a lot safer. But apparently not safe enough, because somehow spiders were still spawning on my roof. So today, I lost it. I gave up. I placed out glass blocks all over my second floor balcony in the hopes that there was just some way that they would stop spawning up here. And while I was at it, I figured, you know, I might as well replace the stairs in my house with more glass too, because apparently they were also spawning spiders. However, I had some visitors under my staircase. Apparently my glass floor was a beast spider paradise because I had a little entourage. Also, if you saw how I spelled that word in my notes, you'd be disappointed. But yeah, I had an entourage of spiders waiting just for any move that I made. They were just waiting, watching, sniffing my feet as I walked by. So with my new audience, I began replacing the nice staircase, so much for looking nice, I guess, with a much uglier set of glass blocks. They don't look better in the slightest, but hopefully now things at least won't spawn inside of my house. After my stairs were replaced, I had even more friends watching from below, including this fun poison guy. I don't know what to do at this point. I kept using my sword's ability to damage them, but those spiders have so much health. It would take several days just to kill them. For the next few days, I didn't really know what to do. I could barely step outside without being destroyed, and I didn't really want to decorate much more under these circumstances. So after the sun had come up, I teleported back down to get more lava because I was going to try and block off the area under my house and spread some lava near it that doesn't, burn down my house along with it, and hopefully stop more of the spiders from just camping under there, because I can't sleep in my own house. Literally, they keep me awake. I can't go to sleep because of the spiders. So after getting more lava and a bunch of glass, I ran out, and immediately this plan was not going to work. The sheer mass of spiders that started beating me up for my lunch money. There was this stupid magnetic spider that just kept pulling me back into the pile of other spiders. I couldn't even get close to the spiders that were stuck under my glass floor. At this point, I knew I needed to leave before getting trapped again. But if I was going to come out here and struggle, I at least was getting something out of this terrible encounter. So while being tossed around from spider to spider, I very desperately ran underneath to try and place out 2 buckets of lava that I had in my hotbar in the ground in the hopes that it would get at least some of the spiders and stop them from spawning there. And after this, I struggled to run back home to get to my front gate while being pulled back by that stupid magnet spider. Also, not to mention, every time these spiders hit me, I would get stuck and I could no longer run, which just made me get hit even more. So it's like every time a spider smacked me, I was getting pulled backwards into the pile of other spiders. But anyways, I finally got back into my base, and the spiders that didn't catch on fire while chasing me just sat on the edge of the wall, dodging my lava. Even without actually making a pit, these guys still managed to escape my lava cascade. Honestly, I was just defeated at this point. I did not know what to do. And then my game decided for me by also crashing again. So I did the exact same thing again, and I fled back home again, and I went inside my house to see the carnage, which turned out to be nothing. The lava was pretty much doing nothing. The spiders were on to me. They were once again learning. But even though they thought they could catch up, I was still 2 steps ahead, and I had this brilliant plan. I broke the glass floor area right next to my fencing from before, and here is where the plan came together. I sat in here, killing off each monstrosity one at a time. And sure, they hit me, but I was perfectly safe. Until finally, I could catch a moment of peace. I had killed all of the spiders, and now, since the lava was down there and they weren't spawning, I had my opportunity. I began dumping bucket after bucket after bucket of lava down the side, just far enough down to hopefully not also burn down my house in the process. And to be extra safe, I also removed all of the fencing that was already catching fire, so it didn't spread to my house, and I closed things off. This took way too long to do, but finally the spiders were at least a little further from home now. It was now day 98, and to be honest, there wasn't much I could do with my base, and I was getting antsy. So today was the day that I was just gonna go outside again, as probably dumb as it sounds. I literally just sat here complaining about how I couldn't leave, but that just makes me want to leave even more. I grabbed all of my current repair rings, and I even used 6 of my 7 remaining emeralds, along with a ton of other resources, to make a ridiculous 6 more. At this point, the majority of my inventory was just repair rings. But honestly, that didn't really make much difference, because it's not like I was going to be looting stuff anyways. How likely was it that I was going to get enough time to stop and open a chest, let alone take the stuff out of it? With my inventory full of repair rings and a waystone in my hotbar as a backup, I was now ready. I grabbed strength potions, opened my front gate to see this ocean of 8-legged monsters. This was going to be fun. So I set off, and my first goal while being out was to retrieve the first waystone that I used a couple days ago to escape death. But the spiders obviously did not want that to happen because they used game crash no jutsu, and my game crashed again. So after prepping again, it was on to round 2, and this time things went equally as bad. This was a fight for my life. I was being thrown around so much that I lost track of where the waystone even was. After catching a tiny break, I noticed the waystone right over to the side, and I very quickly ran over to break it, and I fled for my life. I ran through this minefield of spiders until I finally made it back to the desert where I was getting all of my sand from next to that city. And while here, I finally began to catch a break. And as soon as I caught this break, I was then knocked into this little hole where I was berated by a pile of even more spiders. But finally, after killing off the remaining spiders in the hole, I had escaped the horde. I climbed my way up, and I was now free to move on and explore. I ran past the nearby city, and after making it to the other side of the desert, I stumbled upon this little pillager-infested graveyard. And while enjoying my break from the spiders, I was getting some pretty dank loot from all of the graves. Which, by the way, it is definitely not a crime in Minecraft. While looting all of these graves, I got a bunch of golden apples. I got some cool skeletons. Yes, I said skeletons, like the whole skeleton. I got skeleton heads, zombie heads, and even another god apple. After finishing borrowing, I was planning on sleeping here, but the blood moon had a different idea. So to dodge all of the spiders for the night, I swam out to the ocean to make a small platform where I just existed in peace for a while. Just chilling here, enjoying the aurora borealis in the sky. And that's when I noticed a nice ship off in the distance. Not really spider themed, but I still wanted to explore it, so honestly, I don't really care. I sat here for the night until finally, day 99, the blood moon was over. And my shield was also super healed from the ton of crafted rings in my inventory. So now that the spiders were a little more chill, I crafted myself a boat and made my way over to the ship. And since there was nowhere else for spiders to spawn nearby, you guessed it, they spawned on the ship. I sat here for like a solid 2 minutes straight, butchering all of the spiders as they poured out of this boat. And then I saw it. The boat had villagers. If I had found this sooner, I could have set up like a small little trading camp here. That would have made enchanting so much better. But for now, I guess all I get is all of their belongings. Sucks to suck, nerds. They all had a couple of emeralds here and there and a saddle for the horse that the game wrongfully stole from me. And after I finished stealing from these poor chumps and maybe killing one by accident, I'll talk about that, I got back in the boat and set off looking for something else interesting to do. And while I have the chance to talk about it, this is the only time throughout this entire world that I've actually had time to stop and think, and I was enjoying myself. I boated my way casually in between these two different cities when I found something interesting. I found a warped wooden ship floating in the sky above the city. This thing was going to be insanely dangerous to get up to, but you know what? I had to do it. I broke my way into the city only to then be yeeted by this legendary spider pig. I quickly defeated this guy, but Homer Simpson would still be proud. After clearing the nearby area, I had some time to think about how I was going to get up top. Since spiders can climb up anything, I was going to need a pillar that was separate from the blocks down below. I climbed up to the top of this building using my water bucket, and after starting my pillar, I successfully broke the bottom out and began my long, sweaty palm-filled trip into the sky. After expending most of my blocks, I finally built my way over and very carefully broke my way in, while being very ready for any surprise spiders to try to knock me off. But luckily, this place was clean, and there was an easy spawner to break in the middle, and it also came with a bunch of free chests full of some diamonds, emeralds, and even a gold block inside. After exploring the whole ship, the sun began setting, making it the final day. I placed out my waystone, giving it this very mature name, and just to say I did it, I slept in this bed in the sky. At this point, it was now the final day, and every single spider in this world has fully mutated into these absolute killing machines. After surviving all of this time in this world, it all came to this. If I had thought the hordes of spiders were hard to deal with before, things perhaps just became impossible. So here I was on the final day. Honestly, I didn't really know what else I could do in this world at this point. It was now too late. I looked down off the ship only to see a literal sea of beast spiders. And honestly, I don't want to go home anymore. If I could even call that struggle of a compound home. I mean, sure, Seto Kaiba is there, but he too, like everyone else, was already dead. And the one living horse that I was excited to exist in this world with was gone. So, while looking down off the ship, I jumped. Well, I didn't really expect this outcome, but after jumping, I still didn't die. It's almost like a metaphor. I was so strong that it took both that insane fall and damage from all of these spiders to finally get me. I wanted to take the easy way out, but sadly, this is what became of me. The key to being a good content creator is to actually be thankful for what you have and then thank your audience. So yeah, a bit of a somber outro there, but this mod pack and world were honestly so much fun to play in. If you got this far into the video, you are absolutely amazing and I love you. If you do want to get a hold of this mod and mod pack, and even the world I played in, there is a link in the description to support me on Patreon. It honestly means so much to me that I've been able to do super cool things, like make this mod pack, because of all of you. Genuinely, thank you. And thank you to all of my current Patreons. I'm glad I can finally offer something bigger than a world download for your support. Anyways, this has been Pain Domination, and don't get eaten by spiders out there. Peace.